We are just having some technical difficulties right now, so we will start the meeting as soon as those are resolved.
When you flip through, it's showing what's on your screen there. Through the presentation desk. Yes. Okay. Sorry.
You're staying there? Oh, because you wouldn't get. Okay, good evening, everyone. Thanks for thanks for your patience, and I'll try to not cough into the microphone too much this evening. I will now, at 6:13, call the Planning Advisory Committee meeting of March 35th, 2025 to order. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We also acknowledge that people of African descent have been in Nova Scotia for over 400 years. We honor and offer gratitude to those ancestors of Mi'kmaq and African descent who came before us to this land. We have our agenda for this evening, which has a number of items on it, and there has been some discussion prior to the meeting about moving some things around to try to get many of you out of here as soon as possible. So, Councillor Graham, I will turn the microphone over to you to make that recommendation.
Yes, after,
Oh, the mics are crisp tonight.
should I just continue? That's pretty, yeah?
That's good.
I can sit way back. After a quick informal survey of our guests, it does seem the majority who are in attendance are here to discuss our Robby Street development. I'd like to suggest that we reverse the order of number 5 and number 7, or if it's your preference, just to bump number 7 above 5, whatever works for the chair and the pleasure of our committee.
Yes, sure, we can do that. So keep number 4, our revisions to the MPS, and then we'll go to 373 Robby Street development next. And then we could do golf, callback, and young. Does that make sense?
That sounds great.
Okay.
So I'll make the motion. Does it require a motion?
I think so, yeah. Okay, thank you. All those in favor of amendments, all those in favor of the agenda with that amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any contrary-minded, signify by saying nay. Sorry, Mr. Wallace, you don't get a vote. Motion carried. Okay. So the first thing on the agenda is, next thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from our February 24th, 2025 meeting, which the committee has received a draft of. Are there any changes which need to be made to those minutes? Or any further discussion? Okay. Otherwise, if somebody would like to make a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make the motion, but it's not actually required. The minutes are the minutes.
Okay, we're going to approve them. Thank you, Councillor McGrath. Can I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, so the next thing on the agenda is a revision to the municipal planning strategy and the land use bylaw. And Senior Planner Fox will speak to the committee about that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is amendments for community plan amendments for West Prince Street. This is coming from a recommendation from council that we are looking at these amendments. So just in terms of a little bit of background, so this is about the West Prince neighborhood or the island. It is one of 3 historic African Nova Scotian neighborhoods in town and the only one of the 3 to remain largely intact. Today the island is home to a large number of people of African descent, many of whom are descendants of the original settlers. The island is a thriving and cohesive neighborhood with young families, a strong sense of community rooted in cultural identity. So this is the area we're referring to when we talk about the island. So this is the also, what we've done here is expanded it a little bit. We worked with, there's the existing island, which is the existing residential area. Historically, the neighborhood would have extended all the way down to pretty much to the Chow family to Clake Street. So the area that would be what we're talking about today is going to be what would historically have been the island plus a buffer around what would have historically been the island. So we're including some properties on Juniper and also some properties over as far as Gulf Street in these discussions. And this is all based on historical records. We did a little bit of research. We worked with local historian Nevin Jackson as well, who's a local expert on the history of the island, and determined that the neighborhood would have at one time, as I mentioned, extended all the way down to Clake Street. So just a little bit of background on this. So the town did recently consider a development application for a 5-story 52-unit building on Juniper Street. This proposal, which abuts the island, clearly demonstrated the town's current policies and regulations are insufficient to provide adequate protections for the neighborhood. Proposal also demonstrated that the town's planning policies, regulations, and procedures are not properly aligned with the town's community goals, which related to inclusion and engagement. So there's community goals set out in the town's community plan, which was adopted in last year in January. And there's two policy statements in particular, two goal statements in particular relating to engagement and to inclusion that would not have been satisfied by the current setup. So at their January meeting, council directed staff to review the town's planning policies and regulations and prepare amendments to the town's planning documents to address these concerns. Council specifically requested that lands along the western end of Prince Street, currently zoned regional service, be rezoned to the urban corridor zone. It was felt that the urban corridor zone, which includes greater protections for neighboring residential uses and which is less permissive than the regional service zone, would be a more appropriate zone for this section of Prince Street. Council also requested that the West Prince Neighborhood Advisory Committee be established. The committee which would be primarily made up of residents from the area, would be responsible for reviewing all planning applications on lands in and around the island. This would include all lands that were historically part of the neighborhood plus the immediately abutting lands, or that buffer that I referred to. So in terms of the amendment process, this isn't sort of a typical process that we would work with for the like a development agreement application, for example. The steps are a little bit different. So this is the same as the steps we would have went through for the community plan process, for example, I would anticipate a little less public engagement, that type of thing, but it's the same process. So the steps that we would do here would be the initial review by the committee, Planning Advisory Committee, which is what we're doing today. I'm looking for, at the end of this meeting, a recommendation from this committee to proceed to a public information meeting. Then we'll come back with any results from the public information meeting and hopefully get a final recommendation from this committee. And then it would proceed to a public hearing of council where we get a decision by council. And plan amendments are not subject to an appeal. So there's no appeal process for the amendments to the municipal planning strategy. So that's also unlike a development agreement. So in terms of the proposed amendments, the amendments are to Chapter 4 of the Municipal Planning Strategy, subsection 4.3.1, and it's to change the description of the urban corridor policy area to include areas of West Prince Street. There's also amendments to the land use bylaw, Chapter 4 as well, to change the description of the urban corridor UC zone to include West Prince Street. So the policy area that we're discussing encompasses lands. This is the language right out of the municipal planning strategy. The policy area, when I'm referring to the urban corridor area that we're looking at amending, currently the description says that it encompasses lands around the downtown core, including lands along Yonge, Willow, King, East Prince, Brunswick, Pleasant, and Robby Streets, where development is primarily comprised of early to mid 20th century homes that have been converted to commercial or multiple unit residential uses. What's being suggested is that we add a paragraph to this description to include this policy area and zone. Will also include lands along busier streets where limited commercial, multi-unit residential, and mixed-use development is desirable, provided potential land use conflicts with neighboring residential areas can be addressed. This would include areas such as the western end of Prince Street, King Street, and Glenwood Drive. And King Street and Glenwood Drive are already included in this urban corridor designation or policy area designation. We're just updating it to reflect that. And I should also note that you may note that there are amendments currently underway to the municipal planning strategy land use bylaw to change some of the policy area numbers, so you may see a discrepancy between the two. Okay, so in terms of proposed amendments as well, this is a map amendment. I guess I should, flip ahead. So this is the area that we're talking about. This is the current policy area map, the existing policy area map showing West Prince Street. So you can see on the map, Robby Street runs along the top of the screen, Juniper Street cuts here north-south, and then we have Prince Street running through the middle of the screen, east-west. To the south would be the golf course, this would be the new Argus Drive ball field, and this would be the number 2 construction battalion field. Apologize if I don't have the name correct, but the former TAC grounds would be located here. So Juniper Street is here. This is Truro Toyota. This would be the old Kingston Aluminum. Chow Family Restaurants here at the corner of Prince and Golf. And the Cat Shack, Fletcher's, would be here at the corner of Prince and Juniper. So the proposed map amendment will have the urban corridor policy area extend from Golf Street east to the current residential area on West Prince Street. And it would to north to the Argus Drive ball field, and then to the drainage ditch that runs along here as well, which runs from Kiwanis Pond out to behind the Canadian Tire area. This would include the Chow Family, Truro Toyota, Zach's Auto Sales, Fletcher's, Cat Shack, Hollis Used Car Lot, and the old Kingston Aluminum Building. It would also include the residential uses at 343 and 345 Prince. So this is what the proposed map would look like as being currently set or proposed to this committee and to council as per their request for an amendment. So this is what the urban corridor would extend into this area. So it would go from regional service to urban corridor. Text amendments to the land use bylaw would include amendments to Chapter 2, just to include a provision for the establishment of a West Prince Area Advisory Committee, which was also part of Council's agenda. Establishing an Area Advisory Committee requires Council to actually pass a policy as well, and there's a draft policy which was attached to the staff report that was circulated. That'll be approved separately as part of the amendment package that goes to Council. Now, further to the proposed amendments, there's a rezoning piece to this as well. So this is not the policy area map, this is the zoning map that gets changed. So we're also looking to change the policy area map. The proposed map amendment will have the urban corridor UC zone extend from basically Golf, the Chow Family, along Clyke Street, and the apartment building on the corner of Prince and Golf, all the way down to the existing residential area is what's being proposed. So it's going to go from this to this. And the other big change here, of course, is the Argus Drive ball field, which needs to be updated to reflect its current use. It's no longer regional service. It's now a recreational facility. So the proposal is to change that to parks and open space. So all this area in here, which was formerly regional service, is being proposed to be changed to zoned to urban corridor, which again was the request that council put forward. So in terms of the new policy to establish the West Prince Area Advisory Committee, just a little bit of background on that. So there is Section 201 of the Municipal Government Act, which does enable council to actually appoint area advisory committees to deal with land use issues affecting a specific area. So the proposal is to create the West Prince Area Advisory Committee. The mandate of the committee is to advise this committee, the Planning Advisory Committee, on land use, planning and development matters affecting the island neighborhood. It would include reviewing and making recommendations to this committee on development applications, land use bylaw amendments, and any lands that affect the West Prince Street area. And again, the area that we're talking about would be the area outlined in the heavy black line here. So any development applications taking place in this area that require planning approval, so development agreements, rezonings, that type of thing would have to go through the Area Advisory Committee. So just in terms of the makeup of the committee, and these are just sort of proposals. It's up to council, obviously, at the end of the day, but my recommendation is that it be proposed to 5 to 7 members, maximum 2 members of Truro Town Council, with preference being given to councillors representing the ward or wards that include lands within West Prince Street. Right now, that would be Ward 1. There would be 3 to 6 residents of the West Prince area or property owners in the West Prince area. And I would also look to see that some members of this committee would probably be allowed to serve on that committee as well. And the committee is really only to be meeting as required. It wouldn't be something that would have to happen every month. It would only be when there's applications affecting that area of town. So in terms of impact on the process, the last thing we want to do is add a lot of red tape or a lot of different additional steps to the plan review process. So one of the things I looked at was how would this fit into our current process. So we typically right now we look at what we generally do is all development applications go through a 5-step process. So this would be looking at adding one additional step to that overall application process. So step 4, which is outlined in orange there. Step 4 is the meeting of this committee. So the idea would be that every application would directly go to the West Prince Area Advisory Committee. The application would be reviewed by them. There would be a step 2 and 3, same as you guys would currently look at. The Planning Advisory Committee would currently review applications at steps 1, 2, and 3. Those would all still happen, but they would happen at the Area Advisory Committee level. The committee would then have to make a recommendation to this body. Area advisory committees have to be an advisory committee of this committee. They can't be direct to council, so there has to be any recommendation from the West Prince Area Advisory Committee would have to go through this committee as well. So this could potentially add a month to the process, although I expect what could actually happen is there's no requirement that there's any kind of time lag between the last meeting of the Area Advisory Committee and the meeting where this committee makes a recommendation. So those could happen immediately after each other on the same day, so there would be no additional time required, or it could happen a week later. It doesn't have to be a month, so it doesn't necessarily have to mean we're adding a month to the process. And then it would just follow the normal steps where this committee would make its recommendation to council, and then the normal step 6. So additional step, but not necessarily an additional month is the key takeaway there. So just in terms of discussion on this, on some of the implications of this, first of all, well, it certainly brings the town's plan into conformance with the town's community goals. So for the town to allow any development that would jeopardize the cohesion and integrity of the island neighborhood would be contrary to the town's community goals related to inclusion and engagement. Proposed amendments and creation of the West Prince Area Advisory Committee to review and make recommendations on planning applications in and around the neighborhood would align with these goals. And with the proposed amendments, when considering development agreement applications, and this is an implication of these, something that this committee should take into consideration, is that with any development agreement application, the urban corridor zone would now be the one, the urban corridor policies would be the ones now being considered, not the regional service policies. And the urban corridor policies are a little bit more design oriented. They require greater consideration be given to a proposal's architectural design, landscaping on the streets, impact on the streetscape, and impact on nearby residential uses. So precisely the reason why council liked the idea of having the urban corridor designation applied is also something that should be considered by this committee, because that is something being added to the onto encumbrance on the property owners in the area to adhere to those additional policy requirements. The zone is also, as well, requires greater consideration be given to design elements. There's urban design standards that would apply, not just to development agreement applications. And it would likely result in higher quality, better appearance for development. And these design considerations may also increase costs, so that's something to be considered as well. But I'd say it's all pretty minor, considering that we're bringing the plan into alignment with the town's planning documents, and we're engaging with the community. The urban corridor zone also has more restrictive height limits and setback buffering requirements. We're abutting less intensive residential zones, which is another reason that council liked the idea of applying the regional service, the urban corridor zone to these areas to provide the additional protections that it affords to the island neighborhood. So in addition to the proposed rezoning from the regional service to the urban corridor zone, that will also result in the following. So some other things to consider: multi-unit residential development will require development agreement when they over 12 units instead of 18 currently in the regional service. There's fewer permitted uses in the urban corridor zone than there are in the regional service. The regional service zone is one of our more permissive zones. So things such as automobile sales and rentals, warehousing, storage, beverage room, lounge, cabaret, those types of uses would not be permitted. And it should be noted that several existing businesses would become lawfully existing non-conforming uses as a result of the proposed rezoning. So that's, in effect, you'd be grandfathering those uses. So these amendments will in effect establish that it is council's intent that the long-term growth in this area is going to be more residential, mixed use in character, and less as a regional service type of development. So that's something else to keep in mind. This is a statement. By doing this amendment, council would be making a strong statement that the future development in this area is going to be more consistent with the urban corridor than as opposed to the regional service designation. So just a few more slides, apologies for the length, but the council may wish to only rezone a portion as an alternative to creating making those units, or those uses, non-conforming. Council may wish to consider an alternative, which is to only rezone a portion of the properties in the West Prince area to the urban corridor zone. This could include just those properties that are vacant and that immediately abut the general residential zone. while other properties would remain zoned regional service to reflect the current use of the property. And this would ensure that all existing businesses remain legal uses. They wouldn't become non-conforming. And this is a suggestion for how that zoning map could look. So instead of changing all these to regional service, there would be some that would be changed to urban corridor. Sorry, instead of changing them all to urban corridor, some would remain regional service, and then only the ones abutting the island neighborhood and also ones over on Gulf Street would be changed to urban corridor, while the ones that have the existing commercial operations would remain zoned regional service to reflect the current use, with the exception of the properties that immediately abut the island. So those would change. And the proposed alternative amendment, which is the one that actually, from a staff perspective, the one that I support. And by having the underlying policy area, however, remain the same, or remain urban corridor, change to urban corridor. So yes, you go ahead with the rezoning, but leave the urban corridor policy area in place, or make that change, excuse me. So change it from regional service to urban corridor policy area. Council could ensure that any major redevelopment proposals would still require a development agreement, and that they would be subject to the additional requirements that the urban corridor zone policy area has in place. And major redevelopment proposals would also be subject to review and recommendation by the West Prince Area Advisory Committee. So it still achieves most of the goals and objectives for any major developments and any development on land zoned urban corridor. The one zoned regional service would be, if it was a major proposal, would still have to go through the West Prince Area Advisory Committee and would still have to go through Planning Advisory and Council. And have those additional requirements in place, because the underlying urban corridor designation would empower council to consider those. In terms of next steps, so at this point, what we want to do is have a recommendation from the committee to proceed to a public information session where the proposed amendments will be presented to the public. I would like the committee sort of blessing to proceed with an amendment package that includes the alternative that I'm suggesting, as opposed to making the businesses in the area non-conforming. Proceed with the redesignation of the lands from regional service to urban corridor, but only the partial rezoning. And then we would hold that public information meeting, and at the next meeting, Planning Advisory Committee will review results from the public information meeting and make a recommendation to council on the proposed amendments. And then council would hold its public hearing and then make a decision on the amendments following the hearing. And then again, there's no appeal process as part of this. That concludes my lengthy and very detailed report.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. So today, would you like to have discussion on this, or? Oh, sorry, you can't just jump in with me anymore.
Sorry. Yeah, actually, what I would like, I think, to have what I would like to be able to do is take one amendment package to the public at a public information meeting, and it would be the one that I'm recommending, as opposed to the one that council, I think, initially asked for, which was a complete rezoning. It doesn't mean that has to be the amendment package that we end up with. It's just the one that I think I would like to present. That's the one I'd be recommending. So I'd be looking for this committee to support that, because I do think it's going to be problematic if we take a lot of existing businesses and make them non-conforming. But again, if this committee feels strongly that that part of town, that section of West Prince Street, like if the long-term vision is for this whole area to be more of a mixed-use residential area and see the slow sort of removal of businesses such as the Truro Toyota and that sort of thing from that area town, then that's the direction maybe we want to be going in. But I think I would prefer at this stage rather than make these businesses non-conforming, which doesn't mean they don't have to stop operating. It just means that if they do cease to operate, they can't recommence if it's for longer than 6 months, I believe. It makes things sometimes difficult for things like insurance or reconstruction following a fire or something like that. So there is problems that come along with it, some restrictions, but it doesn't mean they can continue to operate as long as they currently exist, is essentially what that means.
Do you, for our benefit and the benefit of some people here from the West Prince neighborhood, can you run through an example? Because you had mentioned that major developments would still, even if you did this change, meaning that regional services would still be the zone of many of the businesses, you said that even if we went with this, which is in some ways less protective for the island, major developments would still need to come before that committee.
Yeah.
Can you explain what that
I
means?
I think we would have to set it up so that right now the regional service zone says if you have more than 18, you have to go through a development agreement process. But I would like to tie everything to the policy area instead, so that any development applications that come through here would be subject to the normal urban corridor policy area requirements, which says that if you have more than 12, you have to go, I believe it's 12, you have to go by development agreement. So most larger developments would still have to go through a process through the West Prince Area Advisory Committee and through this council as being proposed. Things that wouldn't would be, for example, if you do leave the regional service zone in place, it is conceivable you could have, for example, a hotel development, which is permitted in the regional service zone, and that could be a large building. So that could happen, but most of the stuff we're seeing would be the multi-unit residential. And what we're also showing there too is that by retaining the buffer of having some of the properties that immediately abut the residential uses on West Prince, we're providing that level of protection as well, that if anything happened immediately abutting the West Prince neighborhood, it would also have to go through a development agreement or rezoning. And intensive commercial uses wouldn't be permitted.
Okay, so there still would be some as-of rights which would be permitted under this, which wouldn't be if you changed the zoning altogether.
Yeah.
But you're saying that the urban corridor policies would be applied to the regional services development
'cause-
specifically in that
Because
area.
I'm still proposing at the end of the day that, forgive me if I go back here for a second, that the policy area underneath, the one where all the policies are applied to things like multi-unit residential developments, would be tied to the urban corridor designation. So this is underlying the zone.
Yeah.
So anything that happens in this area would have to go through those policies, and they wouldn't be eligible for the regional service policies. But the existing uses would be reflected by the zoning, and the zoning would allow them to do what they currently do today, rebuild if necessary, and they would be allowed to do some as-of-right commercial uses that don't require a development agreement or, well, a development agreement.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McGrath, you're in the queue.
Councillor Graham was actually first. The queue got a little bit messed up when you were trying to activate the speaker
Oh.
desk.
Well, why don't we put her first then? Okay, just a second.
Do you want me to turn it off and turn it on again?
You're good.
I'm good. It's a three-part question, and I apologize for that. I just need some clarity. Are you able to identify which businesses that we're talking about specifically that are abutting the proposed new zone that you would prefer to not put in the new zone? I believe it would be like Fletcher's, maybe? Is that, which
Yeah,
are they?
The way this map here shows is Fletcher's, Hollis Auto Group has used car sales here as well. Zach's Auto Sales would be here. Truro Toyota, Chow Family Restaurant, and then one of the buildings on the old Kingston aluminum site. What's not shown here and perhaps should be is the Cat Shack, should be also probably regional service as well. So those businesses would be protected by, would keep the regional service zoning, but their underlying land use designation would change.
I
So
understand.
they're allowed to do a lot of stuff, but they're not allowed to do anything major, would require a development agreement, with the exception of something like a hotel.
Okay, I understand that. If they were rezoned and the business sold, would they still be grandfathered under?
Ownership has nothing to do with the use, so the use would run no matter who owns the land.
Okay.
They would still be, if we go the route of rezoning all the properties to
Yeah.
urban corridor. So if you were, for example, change Truro Toyota to urban corridor,
Yes.
which is what originally was what council directed me to look at.
Yeah.
If you did that, Truro Toyota can continue to exist. It's a lawfully existing use. It has a bunch of protections in place under the Municipal Government Act, but if it ceases to operate as a car dealership for more than 6 months, it could not recommence as that use. Same thing, I think Enterprise has rental car in there, like that
Yeah.
wouldn't be allowed to recommence either under the way this is, if we did rezone it to urban corridor.
And I appreciate your suggestion that we may not want to rezone those areas. My final question is, unfortunately, I did not attend the session. I was unable to attend the session where the history of the of West Prince or the island was presented in our community. Had those lands that you are proposing, did they once belong to the West Prince area
Yeah, there's a map
or
here.
the island, whatever?
Yeah, so this map here, well, it doesn't actually show the island. What it shows is the island plus a buffer. So the island is all, this is the island as it exists today, but at one time it would have extended all the way down to include Clyke Street.
I thought so.
And I did have a discussion, I forget his name. Oh, it's terrible.
Jude
Nevin.
Light? Oh, Nevin Jackson.
Nevin Jackson. So I did talk to him about this as well.
Oh,
We-
okay.
We did a little research over the story, and then we both sort of came to the same conclusion that this would be a sort of this would include an additional buffer, but this would definitely encompass all of what used to be historically the island neighborhood.
So was Mr. Jackson in favor of excluding those areas?
No, nothing's been excluded.
Okay,
Added.
or not rezoning those areas, I guess.
We never talked about I never actually had a conversation with him about what was being proposed in terms of the zoning. We did talk about the establishment of the committee, I believe, but I don't think we talked about, I hadn't actually, at that time, when we had that conversation, known exactly what the amendments were gonna look like. So I haven't had that conversation with him. Yeah, I can. Certainly as part of the process moving forward, we can certainly have a further conversation on that along those lines.
I really do understand your desire to do it the way you've presented tonight, and I understand the recommendation. I have difficulty without consulting the community voting in favor of that, knowing that it once was part of the island community.
Well, I think the important thing to note too is that for most applications or most larger developments, the community would still presumably have a voice and representation on the West Prince Area Advisory Committee and would be able to, through that body, be able to have input on any proposal that did take place there.
Except for you're proposing that that you wanted to go to that information session with your recommendation,
Well, I like
not
to have
both, which
like-
I understand.
yeah. I don't like proceeding to public information with options necessarily.
I
It doesn't mean
understand
they
that.
can't be. It's just, it's good to have a starting point and understand where we're starting with, what amendments we're talking about, and then move forward
Yeah.
from there. And if there is pushback on this, and if we want to go with something a little different, when we want to create a new zone, there's all kinds of options. Those are all things that we can look at. But it should follow from a public information session where we have an amendment package to at least initiate the conversation.
Yeah, I really do understand what you're trying to do there, but I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Councillor McGrath, you're up now.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Fox. Lovely to see your face. I'm sure the gallery doesn't appreciate seeing the back of your head, but obviously the technical difficulties, we do what we can. Some questions directly around the new committee to be set up. I understand that we might not, we add an extra step, could add maybe up to a month, maybe less. Have we worked out any logistics on where those meetings would take place? Would those meetings still take place in council chambers? Would they be broadcast out to YouTube similar to this committee?
I haven't gotten to that level of detail on this. I think it would really be up to the committee and its chair where they wanted to meet. I would say this would be the best option if you want to be able to televise and get, well, it's easier for staff for sure. That's not really necessarily the most important thing. But if there is a desire to locate it somewhere closer to the community, that's also an option.
Okay, I just think that with this committee being televised, I mean, obviously we have a lot of people in the gallery this evening. I know there are a lot of people who watch Planning Advisory from home. I think they would probably also be interested in what's happening on the island. And I do think, just for full transparency, my recommendation, for what it's worth, would be that they do meet here and do broadcast out to YouTube, similar to Planning Advisory. We have a development agreement on the agenda this evening at step 3, located within this policy area change at 60 Gulf Street. Does that development agreement get impacted by any decision made tonight? Because this is just our recommendation, hasn't yet gone to council, correct?
No, it wouldn't be affected by any change to policies that are currently being considered wouldn't impact an application that's currently in the process.
Great, great, thank you. And then with your legal non-conforming, I think you probably already answered that, but I just stumbled over legal. I'm like, well, if it's legal, what's the problem? But I think you've answered that now with
Yeah.
that there are protections and restrictions that would apply if there
It's
were.
legal as it exists today, with a lot of limitations on things like expansions and reuse and repurposing and redevelopment and reconstruction.
So heaven forbid that something happened, there's a fire, a flood, perhaps even a pandemic that shuts down businesses for a long time, that could impact their ability to reopen. Yeah, okay. And then just regarding the policy zone versus the policy area versus the zoning area, the Argus Drive ball field is going to go from regional service to parks and open space. I believe, right?
Yeah, I was going to change either way. Recommendation is to just simply change it to reflect its current use, because right now it's zoned regional service, and the idea is that it should be probably zoned to reflect its current use.
Right, and then the golf course is currently zoned as commercial recreation.
Yep.
But it looks like that's also the amendment for the policy area would be to make that also parks and open space?
No, parks and open space is a policy area designation that supports both the parks and open space zone and the commercial recreation zone.
Okay, would you be able to go to the proposed policy areas? Because I think that was what I saw. Maybe yeah, this is the proposed parks and open space for the policy area map.
Yeah, so this is existing, and there's proposed. There's no change there. So it's already parks and open space. Parks
Okay.
and open space policy area designation supports two zones. One is the public parks and open space zone, and the other one is commercial recreation. So the commercial recreation zone you're seeing here and here is supported by that policy area designation.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Mayor Thomas?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Fox. Just for clarity's sake, when we're taking a look, and I think, where are you here? If you want to go back to that West Prince Advisory Committee jurisdiction map. Yeah, so you see business number 310?
Yes, Truro
Okay.
Toyota.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
going to name it. But let's say that changed to under regional service. It's my understanding from your explanation that that could be perhaps a big box store. You know, correct. They would have, you could have that, or it could be a heavy equipment dealership, anything like that. That's possible if it stays regional service.
That's correct.
But if it changed to residential, it will take on the aspect of the urban corridor. In other words, it'll be more restrictive from a
Yep.
residential perspective.
Yes.
So that's
And very
I have
limiting
that
for
clear.
commercial, yeah.
Can you tell me if there's less than 12 units, can it be developed for housing less than 10 units, being a commercial regional service area? Do you follow me?
No, I'm sorry, I'm not following.
Well, we're talking about larger residential units and applying the urban core policy to it. But can any residential development go in there, like, you know, a 10-unit building?
Yes.
Okay.
It could, yes.
That's all I'm asking.
Okay, yeah,
It's that simple.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Did I kick you out?
Yep.
I did? No, you're on.
Yes. Thank
There
you,
you go.
Madam Chair.
Sorry, I'm having some mic difficulties this evening.
Just waiting, I was just waiting for you to officially hand over the floor,
Yeah.
that's all.
It's a fair-
Just, as so often happens when the deputy mayor speaks and asks a question, he gives me something new to think about. That is a rather large piece of land for, say, only a 10-unit building. But could somebody, the owner, perhaps subdivide that, put a small or large driveway or create a new side street and turn that into smaller lots for single-family homes, duplexes, triplexes, a series of smaller buildings perhaps? Is that I believe that would be possible, but do you see anything that would be?
It would be unlikely under the current zoning because there's large frontage requirements for lots in the regional service zone. The urban corridor zone actually has much smaller frontage requirements. So unlikely in the current zone. It's possible, yes, but unlikely.
Okay, but if it was urban corridor, it would be much more likely that somebody could turn that almost into like a mini subdivision almost, I guess, just a side street with a bunch
Yeah,
of.
it's possible, yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting thought. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I think there's been some really good discussion. I guess one thing that I'm hearing bits and pieces of, but not sure if the committee has an opinion on, is whether there is an appetite to not only deal with the situation as it exists now, but to try to zone the area in such a way that it might enhance, return some residential use that has been taken from the West Prince Street neighborhood. So that may be something that may impact the decision of how the zoning would be presented. Mr. Jordan, I'm going to see if you would like to speak. You've been quiet tonight, but I'd like to give you an opportunity to turn your microphone on.
Thank you, Chair. I think that Mr. Fox kind of explained, Mr. Fox explained it quite well, the history of the area. The one recommendation that that I did want to bring forth, I think, was for the Golf Street development, but it may not necessarily be for the developer himself, and more so for the town or just for the individuals in the room. But to think about the acknowledgement of the Clegg Street. It's in there as a little sliver, but of course it was a piece of my history and a history of the town. So, you know, moving forward, it may be a good idea to think about ways in which we could acknowledge that piece, or keep the essence around in some form or manner. But yeah, that was my recommendation.
Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor Thomas?
Yeah, it's my understanding, Mr. Fox, that this is going to go, from what I heard you say, this is going to go to a public sort of hearing or comment time. Is that correct? So I personally would like to hear back from that before maybe it just needs to go to that now that we become aware of it, because, it doesn't really matter to me which way it goes. It matters more to the people that live on, in West Prince than it matters to me. I'd like to hear from them before I make any decision on this, personally, right? Because, that just makes sense, because we're doing this work on behalf of protecting that community. So I'd like to hear which option they think is best for them.
Yeah, I'm not asking you to make a decision on the final amendments. I think what I was looking for was, because council was quite specific in their recommendation that it be zoned urban corridor, the problem with that is that there was all these non-conforming uses. So I think I was just trying to get this committee to at least give me the direction to go, when I go to the public at a public information meeting, that I don't have the whole thing being rezoned urban corridor.
Well, the direction that I would give you is go to them with the same
Both.
presentation that you did to us, and see what their thoughts are.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's
fair
what I
enough.
would suggest.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thomas. Do you need a motion, or are you good with that?
I think I should have a motion to proceed
Okay.
to a public information meeting, yes.
Okay. Can I have somebody put a motion on the table that Director of Planning, Mr. Fox, will proceed with the next step, which is a public engagement session, and he will present both of the options to the public as he has presented to this committee, and then take the next steps after that. Okay, moved by Councillor McGrath. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Graham, thank you. Any further discussion? Or are we ready for the question? Okay, sure.
I'm just wondering, and you likely have not thought it through at this point, but communicating, we're having difficulty with getting information out often, Is there a possibility that we could do some sort of mail drop on West Prince to ensure that residents are aware of the next planning steps?
Yeah, as part of this process, we would notify all affected property owners. It's because when we do large amendments, we don't tend to notify all the affected property owners, but where it's localized and very geographically specific area, we can notify everyone in the property owners, usually is the way it works.
Yeah,
We'll
that's fine.
notify property owners in the area of the proposed amendments or that they're impacted by proposed amendments.
Great, thank you.
Just for clarity, Mr. Fox, that would include the people whose zoning will not be changing?
I think it would include everybody who is in the area affected by the proposed policy change, just to make sure that everyone has a chance to come out.
Great, okay, thank you. Okay, all those in favor of, oh, sorry, Mr. Jordan, you are right here.
I was just going to mention that for the information that needs to be passed around, the alert system through the town might be a good thing to use, because I know it goes out to a good number of people from the community or just connected to the community. So, yeah, that might be great for.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, I think we'll vote on the motion now. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any contrary minded, signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay. Senior Planner Connolly, please bear with me with the microphone issues over there, just so you are aware. So next on the agenda, we are going to have the 373 Robby Street development. This is by Lennox Developments Limited. And this is under Ms. Connolly's projects, so she will speak to this. This application is at step 2, I believe. So if everyone could just pay attention to Ms. Connolly's presentation, then we will have some discussion as a committee, possibly with the developer, and then we will ask for comments from the gallery. Whenever you are ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, all right. So, as you mentioned, this is 373 Robby Street, which was in front of this committee last month for the first step. It has come back in front of this committee with very little changes. Again, just to refresh everyone, this is the site at 373 Robby Street. It's on or between Hengley and George Street. It has approximately just over half an acre of area and 100 feet of frontage on Robby Street. Lands are within the urban corridor policy area. Multiple unit residential properties with more than 12 dwelling units shall be considered by development agreement, which is why it is in front of this committee and council for consideration. Lands are zoned urban corridor UC, and the site is actually outside the 1 to 100 floodway fringe, which you can see kind of wraps around the site. Here we have a photo of the subject site. So it is that large white 2-story property at the end of Longworth and Robby. Another view. And here this is inside the property internally. So this is at the back of the building, and then you see the rear yard facing the west side as well as the east side. So as mentioned, this is at step 2, where the concept revisions are presented as well as the public are invited to provide input on the proposal. We have the site plan, no changes as mentioned to the site plan. It is a very large structure on the lot with a lot of lot coverage. We'll kind of go through it. There is an underground parking podium, and one of the questions that came up from Deputy Mayor Thomas at the last meeting was wondering about the setbacks. Now, I don't have the accurate setbacks amounts. The developer may be able to provide those tonight. However, with doing a calculation, we have the lot width, and we know the width of the parking podium below, and it appears that there's only 0.7 meters in difference between those sizes. So it's really maximal coverage of the width of the lot for the underground parking podium. So to answer your question, there are very minimal setbacks between where the property lines are and where the parking podium will begin. However, there are 46 parking spaces that are proposed to be provided in that parking garage. Here we see the first floor of the proposed unit or building with the underground parking entry. So Robby Street is on the right-hand side of this slide. And then we have the ground floor with some amenity spaces, some units, as well as an indoor pickleball court space, amenity space for tenants. Here we have the following floor layouts for the upper stories. So you can see how those are proposed to be laid out. Here we have some architectural renderings showing what the building is expected to look like. So again, this is the front on the left-hand side. It's facing Robby Street, and the rear of the building is on the left. Sorry, I got those mixed up, left and right. And here we see the west and east side faces of those buildings as well. We have some more renderings. These are more conceptual and fun. Robby Street, again, is at the front. So this is what the architect is projecting this to look like. Here we see another view from the west side, still on Robby Street, facing the front of that building. So you see where the underground parking entrance is. There are some visitor spaces above grade where you see the cars parked. Accessible space as well is provided there, along with the rooftop amenity space. The rear of the building. We have another view of the rear of the building on the east side with the townhouse entrances. So again, the proposal is 6 stories in height. 51 units are proposed, 26 one-bedroom, 25 two-bedroom units. The lot coverage is 52% with the building, 76 with the impermeable surface calculation. Parking, again, was 46 total spaces with below grade, as well as a handful of surface spaces with a parking ratio of 0.9 spaces per unit. And some amenity space provision, obviously the pickleball court, the gym, the golf simulator, and the rooftop patio are included in that. Each unit is expected to have maybe not each unit, but the majority of units have balconies associated with that, which will also count toward that amenity space. The applicant also provided these solar reviews. They're kind of challenging to see, and I tried to put them in a manner that you get a kind of glimpse of what's happening. The movies were quite large, but this one starts out, this is the summer solstice in June 20th. So this starts at 4:55 a.m., or this actually is 5:55, I believe, because I cut some of them off. Obviously, the sun shines a little bit longer, but you can see the grayed out, the light gray on the renderings kind of show the sun's progression throughout the day. And then we reach solar noon here on the bottom, and then it kind of shifts as it moves across. We've also done the solar review for the equinox, which is September 21st. And you see again how those shadows change early in the morning, progressing, again solar noon, and then into the evening. And finally, the winter solstice. So we see not a lot of sun, obviously, on December 20th. And that's what the shadow would be projected to look like, cast on the adjacent properties and buildings, if there was sun on that day. So the updated development application notice sign has been placed on the site. Information has also been posted on the town's website under development applications. And a mail out will be sent to all the property owners within 150 meters of the subject lands regarding public hearing notification. And at the previous Planning Advisory Committee, members had mentioned and advised the applicant that they would be expecting for them to hold a public information session. They have been in contact with me about that. No date has been scheduled at this time. However, PAC members advised them that it should be held prior to coming back to PAC for the 3rd time. So that will be continue to be advised for them to do and hold that. So it's on them to book that time and date. So I've amended the schedule here a little bit so we see what the next steps are. So before proceeding to step 3, I've kind of added it in here with the public information session, time and date to be determined before progressing there. And that concludes my presentation, Madam Chair. We also have the developer who is available to speak, and they do have a presentation that I'm not sure that if they want to go through it, but it is available. A lot of the renderings that are in that have already been included in my presentation, so it's up to the committee, but they are also available to answer some questions.
Thank you, Planner Connolly. We're in a bit of an interesting situation tonight because we have the presenter chair taken up because of our technical difficulties. What would you like to do? Carla, do you want to
Scooch over to the side.
scooch
if
over
that
to the
works.
side?
Yeah, sure. I can run through the,
And who, Mr. Johnstone, are you coming down or? Sure. Okay, I think last time you had your architect here, Mr. Dorgan. Is he not here this time?
No, he's not, no.
Okay.
I don't have a presentation. I'm not sure.
I have it on here, actually, Ryan. Yes, Mr. Johnstone.
It's nice to see some of the folks in tonight.
And you can vote.
If it's easier, I can take the wireless mic.
For you or for?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, whenever you're ready.
Sure, yeah. So I don't actually have anything to add from the last time.
Then if you're not prepared to do that, then absolutely. I don't think, if there's nothing to add, we can flip through because all of this information was already provided in the previous presentation.
Yeah, sorry, one thing I wasn't clear on, because it isn't in our package, was the shadow study. So besides that, was there anything that the committee hasn't seen that either of you know
I'll
of?
tell you some dimensions, some updated dimension packages, late last Friday, but nothing's changed in terms of design or dimension.
Okay, another thing that was suggested the last time was, and I know you have rendering certainly where the building is shown and but in terms of the neighboring properties, if you can just keep going there, Ms. Connolly, a little farther, they, like this one here, for example, they all just appear as light gray square boxes. It's just unclear, because, I mean, obviously, one of the big things that this development has, is doing is plonking itself in the middle of a residential neighborhood. So I think it would be helpful for the committee to really see, and again, I point to the Stanfields project, you can look at it, it's online. They provided for the committee a real, I don't want to say bird's eye view, because it was, a street view of how this building will look if you're standing next to it, if you're standing on this side of it, if you own this house. So to me, those are the things I was hoping you were going to bring today. I appreciate the shadow study, but we'll have to look at that a bit more closely. It was hard to see just on the screen, but those are really the things that I think people want to know is when this building is built, how is it going to impact my neighborhood? And those things can work both ways. They can actually sometimes work to your benefit because people see, okay, it's actually not as, it isn't as I feared or whatever. Obviously, we don't know. But I think just what you're providing to us doesn't, in my opinion, give us enough of what I would like to see. But I will turn the microphone over to Councillor Graham.
I really love this development. I love almost everything about it, except the location. I feel the bulk of the building is far too big. It takes up almost the entirety of the lot. From what I understand, but I'm often mistaken when I'm reading plans, there's only less than a meter around the two side perimeters, a little more in the front, a little more in the back. But am I correct in understanding it's 0.7 of a meter on the two sides to the neighboring or adjacent properties? Is that correct?
Pedestal. So the building itself won't be that close to the other property lines.
How close will it be?
Those dimensions were contained in the report for the actual building. So from Robby Street, it's set back 10.8 meters. From the east property line, it's 8 meters.
Okay.
At least 2.5 meters from the west property line, and then 6.1 from the rear property line.
Thanks for the clarification. I'm often mistaken when it comes to those logistics. And when I looked at it here, it looked very close as well. My second question is for Mr. McKinnon. In your experience, so now that I'm a little bit more clear that it is the podium that brings, you mean the underground parking, right?
Correct.
So that is only going to be less than a meter from the adjacent properties. Do you have concerns about that when it comes to foundations and like that seems extremely close to me, but I would need the advice and the opinion of a professional.
Well, there's just so many different ways they can do the construction. If it's done properly, there's not an issue with it. But yeah, it's really close to the line. I mean, for your regular ongoing maintenance of the building, it's, it's just the parking podium. The building itself is set back, so. But no, I mean, the parking podium, you see it all the time in the city when people dig foundations right next to the sidewalk and keep the sidewalk open. So it has to be done properly with sheet piling, whatever else. It depends on what their engineer recommends they do for the construction.
So is that something that, if this were approved, it would be part of the process for you to be monitoring that and keeping track of that? Or, it just seems like a big risk to me, but again, I'm not an engineer, so.
No, that would be up to their engineers and the building inspector, not my department, no.
So I could probably add as well that the town is currently considering a construction site management policy. That's actually before council next week. So we are, because of all the development we've been getting, because of the growing complexity of the development applications, because we're starting to look at things like cranes, we are having to have a more sophisticated process to review applications as they come forward, permit applications, and one of the requirements is going to be a construction site management plan, which deals with things like exactly what you're talking about. Things like fencing to protect the site, things like if you have a crane, how that gets handled on site, all those things will be covered.
Oh, that will give us some security or comfort, I'm sure. But back to the bulk of this apartment building, I really feel the bulk is inappropriate for that lot in that end of town. And I don't know what you can do about that. I don't know, I'm not an architect. I don't know, but there are a lot of amenities there, which are wonderful for the residents that will be living in there, but it's adding to the overall bulk of the building, and as such, I really don't know that I could support it in this current way.
Councilor Graham, if I could just speak to the parking for a minute. So the underground parking is very intentional. It's designed to reduce maintenance and disruption in the neighborhood. By putting all the parking underground, where you're not going to have to deal with plow trucks 3 times a day in a big snowstorm in your neighborhood with lights and the noise, the disruption of people coming and going at all hours of the night in the neighborhood. So while it does seem like, it might be close to the property lines, it's done actually to reduce disruption in the community and the neighbors.
I get that, and when we have the person on staff that's going to manage site, it won't be a concern. I'm sure they'll ensure that it's safe and appropriate.
For sure, and the parking pedestal, the Lindsay team's already been on site to do site surveys and test the ground to make sure that is suitable for that type of design. With respect to the bulk, it's the quagmire of any developer is how do you build a building that is both, a good business model as well as not too destructive for the community. So that's what we've landed on based upon what the numbers are.
Yeah.
The problem is that as you take away units, you have to scale back on other things, amenity space, you know, so we tried to find a happy medium here for everybody. I would encourage anybody who's interested to take a look at, I've had a website built that includes some of the interior designs of some of the apartments, thelennoxliving.ca, so you can see some of the apartment designs for yourself.
Oh, I'm sure, like, I really do love the development. I think it's perfect. I just think it's in the wrong location. Yeah, it's great. I like the aesthetic, I like the amenities, I like it all, but the location is a problem.
So what is your specific feedback for me?
My specific feedback is that the bulk is too large for the lot
Okay.
and for the area.
Okay.
But I really like the look of it. I really like everything about it, except for that. I feel it would
What-
be
what do
better
you-
suited somewhere else in town.
What do you feel would be an appropriate size?
Well, I think that the height in that area is not compatible with the neighboring homes. I think the width is too close to the neighboring homes, and the depth is too close to the neighboring homes. So the entirety of the development is just too large for the lot.
If I could point out for a minute, several of the R1 lots that are abutting this property several of them don't actually have homes on them. There's one that's actually at the back end of it, that's just a vacant lot.
Yes, I can picture
with a
that.
separate pit.
But there are two homes on either side.
That is my backyard. It is not a vacant lot, and I pay property tax.
Oh, it has a separate,
Okay.
it has a separate pit, though. There's a separate lot with a separate.
No, not a vacant lot.
But there's, okay. Anyways, I'm simply making an observation that, you know, I'm trying to find a way to be compatible with the neighborhood, and the property lines, while they're there, you know, that's different than where the actual structures are on site those lots. So there's really only one property that's R1 that has a structure that's even remotely close to these property lines.
Well, what did you clarify for me, Ms. Connolly? It was 8 meters?
From the side yards?
Yeah.
From the eastern property line, it's 8 meters, and then from the western property, it's 2.5 meters.
I would say that's still pretty close.
That's to the property lines, but not the structures in the other lots.
Well,
I'm not disputing it, saying it's property. If we're engaging, are we engaging with the community members now? Is that the?
I think that's the discretion of our chair to
No, I
determine.
think it would be best if we could leave the community engagement just for a moment. Everyone will have their chance to speak, so I understand there are, people who wish to speak, but let's just wait for the committee to get through their discussion first. Can you go
Lot at the back.
back,
That one right there.
Ms. Connolly,
a separate
just to the ones that actually show what we're looking at?
The renderings, is that what you're asking? Sorry.
I think it was, you just went past sort of the, winter streetscape, yeah. This might be helpful for you, Councillor Graham, if you're wanting to see. Well, those, I expect those big trees on either side won't be able to stay either. Is that the case, Mr. Johnstone? They would be.
I believe one of them will have to go. I did actually plant some trees on the property a few years back along the perimeter. I think about 8 or 10 of them, but the large one there would have to go, unfortunately, but I'd be willing to replant a tree somewhere else in town or work with the town on that.
So it is a helpful slide that you've brought to our attention, and it just reinforces my initial observation that I think that the bulk of the building is too large for the lot. So thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Thomas?
Okay, thank you. I don't think I was next, but I think someone turned off their lights, so yeah, I'm next.
Sorry, I can only do what I can do.
I understand, and I appreciate all you do. This is regards to Ms. Conley, in regards to setbacks. You're right. I mean, the building itself is within the bylaws in regards to side setback. But you didn't in the report here, you didn't go into the relationship between height and setback in urban corridor zone according to the bylaws. And of course, we all know that we're dealing with a development agreement, but could you explain the bylaw in regards to an urban corridor as it abuts a residential neighborhood in regards to setback and height restrictions?
Yes, of course, and thank you for pointing that out. That was not included in here. It will be part of the full policy review. It is important to draw that, and I think you did bring that up to the Deputy Mayor at the last meeting. There is a requirement that the town has, which I believe I sent in an email to you and your team, Mr. Johnstone, about a height is limited on properties when they are within a certain distance of the general residential neighborhood zone. So that the general residential is the orange that we see on this land use map. Of course, the property in question is within the urban corridor, which is why this application has come forward. However, there are also other requirements that apply, which Deputy Mayor Thomas is referring to, which will limit the distance or the height that the building could be if this was built as of right. Council has the ability to apply those requirements or not apply it. So it is limited, I believe. I don't have the bylaw here in front of me. It's on my computer. Where
48.2 feet, I think it is. Yeah,
okay, if
yeah.
you have it there, that's perfect.
Well, yeah, 48.2,
Okay.
yeah.
So obviously, this is a 6-story building. It's going to be a bit taller. Traditionally, we assume it's about 10 meter or 3 meters per story. So it's going to be projected to be taller than that. So the developer has made a choice to submit that building as it is shown, and then council and PAC can recommend either to enforce that requirement or
Right.
make a variance, so to speak, of it.
Right, and I appreciate that, and that's the point. And I would appreciate that in the information, because that's an important consideration, because, you know, within 48 feet of the residential area, it can't be any more than, 48 feet can't be any more than 3 stories, and then you can move to a maximum of 4 stories as of right, according to the bylaws in this area. And the reason that council decided to do that in the urban corridor area, in particular, when it abuts a residential area, is because of the sensitivity of having a tall building next to residential properties, you know, single-story, double-story properties, and their privacy and their property value and all the rest, and just keeping the character of the neighborhood somewhat intact. Now, we all know, too, that we need development. This property probably could be developed and developed well. The question is, you know, what is best for this particular lot? And, you know, when it comes to development agreements, the purpose of the development agreement is to allow council, I wrote this down just a second ago, allow council to consider exceptions to the prescribed bylaws for the zone involved. I can't even read my own writing, for the lot in which it is situated, right? So, you know, we can look at exceptions in order to allow a project to go forward. But in this case, I want to stick with the bylaws. That's how I come down. And the reason is that I think that this development, though it's a very good development, I mean, my goodness, we've had several developments in front of us, and I would rank this as one of the better developments that I've seen, design-wise and everything else. I just, you know, I think that I would personally like to see us not make exceptions to it. The only exception that I think that this committee should consider would be going to exclude the 3-story and just allow a 4-story. I think that's a compromise of some sort, because you have to pay for, you know, the parking is very expensive, and an underground parkade is far better than surface parking in a residential neighborhood, because then you're just going to have a bunch of pavement, and it's ugly and it doesn't look good, where you can have some landscaping or something. It just is a better fit, and I understand that and I appreciate that, but I also appreciate the dollars required to do an underground parkade. And, you know, you're saying 6 stories, but we see 4 stories with underground parkades that are being built. Now, cost of construction is forever going up, so, and I don't have those figures, but I'm throwing this to you. And my last comment is I love everything about this property. except that, and I'll tell you why, except that rooftop patio, and I'll tell you why. I was out walking my dog. This is anecdotal. I was walking my dog, and I heard noise a block and a half away, so this is at 11 o'clock at night. So I walked the block and a half just to find out what's going on, and it's 4 guys, and they're just having a beer on the front porch, but I could hear them in a block and a half away. They weren't drunk, they weren't rowdy, they were just, talking about the day. But at 11 o'clock at night, it really travels, and I'd hate to live beside them. I thought, man, am I glad I don't live beside that place, because if I was trying to get a sleep, I can't sleep with that kind of noise coming from a place, and I worry about people's privacy when you have a patio high up, and not only that, but the noise that comes from that, et cetera. So I don't like that idea. If it was out in the country, I'd love it, but in the neighborhood, I personally don't like that. So that's what it's a personal choice, and it's something that I think you need to be sensitive about, because I think it'll be a point of contention going forward. Maybe not, but I think it's possibly a point of contention in the neighborhood, the noise that would come from a rooftop patio. Okay, that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McGrath, you've been waiting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, the microphone difficulties tonight are much fun for all involved. Thank you, Mr. Johnstone, for being here. I think we've already addressed the parking podium setback. This is going to be underground. It's not going to be visible. There may be some issues if someone has a tree in their back at the, close to the property line that the roots may be impacted, perhaps. Having looked, I'm not sure if there's anything that qualifies there, but as a future consideration, might be something they have to worry about. Ms. Connolly, can we go to one of the renderings that showed the front of the building, please? That one will do lovely. I mentioned last meeting, one of my concerns is around the driveway. We've got, I believe, 46 parking spaces in this development, and the driveway offset from Longworth Avenue, so it's not directly in front. I was out there on the weekend. I noticed what I presume on the right there is the service driveway, directly in line with Longworth. That may be beneficial for deliveries. And I did chat with Mr. McKinnon last time, and I chatted with him before this meeting again about my concerns, and apparently an offset is a little bit better. But looking at this rendering, my concern is if I'm in my vehicle coming up that ramp and there is a vehicle parked next to what looks like a little Volkswagen Golf there in that empty space, am I going to be able to see traffic coming down Robby Street? I would ask you to consider removing that parking space or changing it to something, maybe even bicycle parking, planters, something that's not going to block the visibility. Because I think if I'm in my car, especially down lower, coming up that ramp, trying not to block the sidewalk for people who are out walking their dog, I want to make sure that it's safe, that you can see other traffic in the roadway that's approaching. The shadow study, thank you for providing that, or sort of providing that. It's I would love to have had this in the package. I don't believe I saw that there. This is this just the after, or is there before and after here? Because I think we just had the solstice and the equinox, or equini, maybe, or solstices and the equinox. But this is all afterward. We have nothing to compare to what it is now.
I have requested that.
Okay, if we could get that in something that's not quite so tiny that I can actually get my hands on and actually see, because this is difficult to manage, especially with the glare of the lights above on the screen here.
Councillor McGrath, if I could just, sorry to interrupt, but they have been provided, and I can share them with committee members. We may also provide them on the development applications website if they're part of this package, perhaps. There are videos, they're just really large, and they're really short. So you kind of watch it and it just kind of goes, like it's a really fast sped up play for the sun movement, but they do provide you a really good glimpse of where the shadow starts and ends with the sun rising and setting. Those might be of benefit. Also, this has been provided in a larger format, but for the presentation, I've obviously kind of condensed it. But certainly I can add that in a more accessible manner for PAC members as well as anybody in the public who want to see that. So we do. I don't want you to think that the developer did not apply that. It was me putting it in the application. We do have some of that information available.
Sure, certainly not suggesting that anything untoward was happening and that we were trying to sneak things around. But and anytime, feel free to interrupt me if you're going to give me information that's going to help my line of questioning. I certainly don't mind that at all. But yeah, if we could get that even access to the videos, that we could kind of go even just frame by frame, as you know, to just sort of see. It is interesting that Madam Chair brought up the Stanfields development, because that's there were some concerns brought up with that one that I think also align here. One of which is the solar access and the shadows, the proximity to the neighbors that council, except for myself, happily voted for on Queen Street, despite the potential impact there. It's interesting to hear the opposite coming out tonight. But also the setbacks. I don't suppose you happen to have the setback of the existing structure at 373, would you?
Not in front of me, no.
Not in front of you. I'm just looking at it on Google Maps over here and looking at, if we could go back to one of those renderings, Ms. Connolly, that just shows the front. That one again will do. And I think we said the setback, and I don't know if it's that front facade or one of the ones that's set back, but we said it was 10 meters from the roadway?
The 10.8 meters from Robby Street, the front.
10.8 meters. So it's the very front with the pillars, or where the doorway is?
It would be the building, so I would say it would be the physical, not the pillars, where the doors are.
So where the doors are, which is set back a little bit further from the upper part of the building that comes out. Okay.
I do have the setbacks for the existing building, as I have the
Fantastic.
current
Look at you.
survey plan. So the east, so from the existing foundation of the building to the eastern property line is currently 7.28 meters. The western setback, the building to the property line, is 11.33 meters. And from the Robby Street to the front of the building is currently 16.38 meters.
Sorry, you said 16.38? And then we're going to drop that 16.38 to 10.8, you said, correct?
Correct.
Because one of the things that we would look for in the existing land use bylaws is that it sort of aligns more with the existing buildings, and that was something that came about with that Stanfields development on Queen Street, that they had actually moved it to adjust the shade and also to better align with the existing setbacks. And again, just referencing my memory, referencing Google Maps here, I think that a difference of roughly 6.5 meters is going to be a bit of a significant change to those setbacks. Now, that's not to say that I want to see the building moved back that 6 meters and then potentially impact the properties and property owners behind it. It is an observation only at this point for consideration. And Mr. Johnson, feel free again to interrupt me at any time if you have something that you want to say in response to anything that I'm bringing up.
The only thing I'll mention is the first thing you talked about was the trees, and I do love trees. I don't like damaging the trees. If there was surface parking, all the salt would probably kill the trees. Going underground, no salt required. It's actually better for all their surrounding vegetation.
Oh, no, I agree. I mean, I would love to get rid of some of the parking entirely, honestly. I'd love to get rid of all of that surface parking and push all of it underground. As the deputy mayor has pointed out, nobody really likes to see big parking lots. It's not conducive to a good neighborhood, for a residential neighborhood anyway. I want to talk a little bit about affordability, a couple of different tacks. Now, I don't know what you're charging for these units, but I'm taking a wild guess that with on-site pickleball, the golf simulator and all this, that we are not looking at affordable housing. This is going to be high-end availability, correct?
Well, that's not entirely true. It's all about how you kind of finance the building. So there are options out there to drive efficiency into the costs. Whether you work with, say, CMHC to do a 50-year amortization, you work with a design builder to basically get your costs down in the build by optimizing your build costs and how you do it. And I am open to the notion of putting in some we'll call them sub-market rent units, as long as the numbers for the building work.
Okay. I am a big fan of mixed income buildings and not having sort of class segregation, I guess, and you know, throughout the neighborhood. So that's wonderful to hear. Now, when you talk about costs, that was the other affordability prong I wanted to follow. There's been a lot of talk about tariffs from the U.S. They've been on, they've been off, they've been on, they've been off. I'm hearing anecdotally from some people I know who are developers that some costs are going to be a concern. If this was to pass PAC, if this was to be approved by council, if you were to get development permits, when would you expect to be getting shovels in the ground? And are you concerned at all about the costs of materials going forward? Because what I don't want to see is a project start and then just have a hole in the ground or a partially built building, a stalled project. I mean, if obviously the neighbors don't want the building there at all, as we keep hearing, I'm sure they would be even less happy with a partially built building that doesn't even house people. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I certainly can. You know, there's a lot to unpack there in terms of what you just discussed, but let me just back it up a little bit. So, with respect to the cost of the units, the cost of the units are largely going to be a function of the number of units in the building. The more units there are, the service, the amenity space, and the overall cost of the building, the lower theoretically the cost should be. On top of working with CMHC, top of working with a design builder. If I was to get this approved, my intention would be to have it shovels in the ground in the next year and a half. What was the other question?
Just about cost of materials and tariffs and the avoiding a stalled project should our relationship with our southern neighbors turn a little bit more economically sour?
Look, I think everybody's concerned about that. Every business owner is concerned because it's a big question mark. You have uncertainty, it causes stress, and nobody really knows how that's going to unfold. I think my approach, being somebody local, I'm a huge believer in supporting local. I've hired a local architecture firm, local build firm, basically to try and keep costs down and work with local suppliers as much as possible. And I think I would probably speak on behalf of most developers to say, once we get started on a project, we have to get it completed. It's all part of the the financing of the project. You can't just have to do a building. You have to get all the way to completion to get your financing on the project. Right. So we would do whatever we would have to do to get it completed.
Okay. And then so you would say that if, which sounds like a big if sound based on some of my compatriots on the committee here's comments, you would be looking to have shovels in the ground within a year and a half of approval by council.
Correct.
Okay. I think that is all for me for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Thomas?
My questions are for Ms. Conley. Ms. Conley, when it comes to the front setback, and some discussions had been had with that, and when you look at the maps, the zoning map and the policy map handed out, you can essentially see where the buildings are relative to Robby Street in the neighborhood, two left, two right of the property in question. So looking at those, this particular building that's on the site that we're discussing now is the farthest of any building on the block from the road. Some appear at the corner there. The house on the corner of Hingley and Robby appears to be the closest. So I'm asking you. We've talked about 16. We've talked about 10. It looks like it's 10 meters. It's 30 feet. How is that decision made? And I know the policy too, that you try to do like the mean or something like that. But depending how large this project is in the end, no matter how large it is, it's going to be the largest, most likely the largest building on that block. And streetscape's important, so you don't want it, sticking out and so obvious. You want to set it back. So I'm going to leave that with you, but I'm just wondering how you come about that thinking. You just take the mean, do you, of the distance and say, well, that's what it's going to be, or do you consider the property to the left and to the right of it, or how is that done?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for the question. I would evaluate it and certainly look at the surrounding properties. And yes, the bylaw does have setback requirement. As we are moving through the development agreement process, there is that flexibility that's built in that we already referenced with,
Right.
council being able to either apply the requirements of the land use bylaw or, requiring more or allowing
Right.
less. So it would be more in line with what makes sense for that building and what the proposal is. Does the physical look of the building, like when we look at the conceptual renderings, does it really overwhelm the streetscape? Or does it have enough architectural interest to mitigate those factors of the size of it, right? So,
Right. But I guess what I'm looking for, when we next meet on this building, if you could make a recommendation as to what you think is and as to why. Is that a good question?
yes, that'll be part of the policy review, actually, so that's, yes.
Yeah. Secondly, is that shadow study. I'm just looking at that shadow study, and there's two things, at least in my property, is summer, because I like to head out into my backyard, and I have a garden and stuff, so that's always of interest to me, the shadow of trees and et cetera, because I'm a bit of a vegetable gardener. But the other thing that is the winter, because things can be cold, and without sun, it's not very nice, The sunshine in February is or at this time of year, it can be quite cool, but when you got the sun shining, it's okay. So I too would like to see that, because that's a real consideration for the enjoyment of people's properties, is the shadow effect at particular times of year. And I think that winter solstice or that January, February period, if there's a lot of shadow on properties, it really does make it not as livable. So I just like, as has been asked, I just like more understanding of that, There's some large trees on the property that already, but they're deciduous, so they don't affect winter's heat from the sun. But those things need to be looked at and considered. I'm just saying that because it is important in this climate to have, not to have, to have a reasonable amount of sun in your backyard at any given time. Any given day, I should say, maybe not time, but any given day, right? Thank you.
Maybe just to add to the setback discussion, I don't have a problem with a building being a little closer to the road. To me, if it was in my neighborhood, I would prefer, like if I'm looking at these maps of George and Hengley and that kind of stuff, to me, I think the impact would be lessened if the building was a little closer to Robby. So I would think if that can lessen the impacts at the back, that would be beneficial. I don't see a reason for it to be set back as far as the house currently is, the house that's on the property. But I think one thing that, Councillor Graham brought up and then Deputy Mayor Thomas brought up, but we haven't really fulsomely discussed, and maybe it's just something that we send back with the developer, but really the issue is that if this committee wishes to strike 2 stories off the building, right? Based on the size being too high, based on the bylaw being contravened, because right now, it's at 76.4 feet, and 48 was what Deputy Mayor Thomas had mentioned from the bylaws. So if anyone has anything else, I guess if anyone has anything to say otherwise, or if anyone further agrees with that concept, because, Mr. Johnstone is saying, what do you wish for me to change? And, if this committee is saying take 2 stories off, that's a pretty clear direction. Is that what the committee feels should be communicated to the developer, or are we not at that?
I was pretty clear that that's what I'd like to see, but the thing is that the 48.2 is actually the amount of feet required from a residential zoned property before you can go to 4 feet. And I'm saying, well, to 4 stories, from 3 stories to 4 stories. And I think, I'd be willing to you know, it all depends on, you know, but that's something that maybe I'm not such a stickler on, but the maximum height of 4 stories in this particular neighborhood, I think is a reasonable height restriction. So that's what I'm suggesting.
Thanks. Okay. I know we have some people here from the gallery who wish to speak. We do have a microphone that can be handed around. Just in the interest of time, I might just suggest that, you know, if others have sort of voiced similar concerns and you don't feel as though you need to add anything to that, it might not be a bad idea. Obviously not wanting to cut people off, but just reiterating the same points that have been made might not be the best use of time. We do have 3 other projects. Please introduce yourself and just sort of give the committee an indication of, you know, why you're here. I assume you live in the neighborhood, but that would be helpful.
Sorry, can I just say one more thing before
Yes,
we get
yeah.
some comments? Because I know this was brought to the attention last time about the rainwater mitigation. Since the last meeting, I have confirmed with my team that we are actually capturing a lot of water coming off the structure. And it's going to be redirected away from the backyard area. I know that was a concern of several people. So if
Great.
you compare that to what it is now, there's no rainwater capture going on. It's just whatever falls on that lot just goes wherever it goes. So there will be some intentional rainwater management occurring.
Great, thank you. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh my. Go ahead there, Councillor Graham.
Or it may be from Ms. Connolly. Do you think you could bring up slide 3? And when, it just helps me a lot if when our audience, if you could identify the area that you're talking about as it relates to slide 3 there, that would help me to understand where you're.
Yeah, good idea.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Leah Poirier. I live at 90 Churchill Street. My property directly backs into this development agreement area. We do have 3 deeds to our property. It was a surprise to us when we bought it, but that is our entire backyard that is encompassed in this area. This afternoon, in preparing for this meeting, I took a chance to review the Affordable Housing Needs Survey and Supplies Study that Truro and Colchester did in 2021. Its purpose was to contribute recommendations for long-term community sustainability and improved health. It noted that this was important because a vibrant and affordable housing ecosystem generates several social, economic, health, and fiscal benefits. This proposed development is invasive. It does not tick any of those boxes. Our family moved to 90 Churchill Street when my son was diagnosed with autism in 2012. We needed a quiet street and a quiet neighborhood for his safety. He is now 20 years old. He feels safe walking in our area, and I don't know that that will continue. The construction of this building as well will be extremely detrimental to his health and well-being. And I worry tremendously about his safety afterwards with the addition of probably 100 more people in our backyard looking at him. So my husband and I have made the difficult conversation of moving. We will leave Truro if this happens. We will uproot our autistic son to his detriment for a terrible transition in housing. And my 17-year-old son, who loves CEC, who was born here and calls Truro home, will also not call this community home anymore. I also wish to introduce you to some of my neighbors that may not be here. The family from Montreal that moved in across the street a few years ago. The woman a few houses down from us who's been battling breast cancer for the last couple of years. The senior woman who lives in the bungalow on the corner of Philip and George who gets home care every day. And then the gentleman 2 houses down in the bungalow who's legally blind and walks with his seeing eye dog in that community every day. These are all people that will be significantly detrimentally impacted, not to mention the residents of Longworth and the Longworth long-term care unit that is there. I ask council to reconsider this proposal completely. It is not the right fit for our community. Thank you.
Can I, can I comment on that? Pardon me.
Yep.
So, so I got a frog in my throat. So, I hear you, and I understand that communities are supposed to be diverse, and communities are supposed to have layers. When I conceptualize this development, I do think about the neighborhoods that have, that people are overhoused. Developments like this will allow multi-generational living in the same neighborhood. And that's exactly what I'm intending. They're gonna be nice units. These are not gonna be, there's not gonna be vagrants. There's not gonna be vagrants living in here.
They will not be affordable.
Well, there's no guarantee they won't be.
Son will not be able to live there. It will not be affordable.
Like a single person living in a 5-bedroom house or a 4-bedroom house. I mean,
That doesn't happen in our area.
well, I mean, I don't know, can you speak for the entire neighborhood? I mean, at the end of the day,
Yes.
okay. So, look, I'm not trying to make any enemies here. I'm just trying to be engaging with you.
I appreciate that.
I'm local. I live locally. I'm a stakeholder here in the community. I care about what people think. I drive down that street every single day. I live in the neighborhood. I'm not trying to create enemies or make people move away.
You don't live right beside it.
That's correct. I don't live right beside it. Yeah. But I do live in the, but I do live in the community.
The proposal is over the top.
And that's your opinion, and I respect that.
For financial gain for you, which will impact financial gain for the rest of us.
Well, that's not necessarily true. I mean, the proper development can really add layers and complexity to a neighborhood. And if you say, maybe someday, you know, your sons or your children want to live in the neighborhood and you need to live close by to them.
Won't be here.
Well, and that's your decision.
We're not gonna live through that construction.
Okay, thank you. I think we'd like to move on. Okay, just hang on 1 second there, microphone will get to you.
Maybe not, I don't know.
Anyways, I live across from it. I live right beside the Longworth seniors. And one concern, traffic. I have quite a time getting out of my own driveway as it is now. If you're going to put 50 more cars in there. And several years ago, before this gentleman owned it, the previous owner tried to just add on a couple things, and it got turned down for various reasons. The property, yeah,
6
yeah,
units.
and the property hasn't got any bigger, so I don't know why this can even be entertained by the council, that you could put such a development there, and it won't be affordable. We can live in our house cheaper than any apartment in this town right now. There you have and you've got all these big buildings by the train tracks and Queen Streets, and it's gonna take away from our neighborhood, probably put down our house values. So, it's a lovely looking building, but not for where we're at.
Yeah, and I don't know if this committee can speak at length to the affordability. I think we acknowledge that, you know, it is not cheap to build a development. And I think the community appreciates a well-built development. So I think it is challenging for a developer to build something that's attractive and still affordable. So, and I mean, I might just add to the affordability piece that part of units being affordable is that there are a lot of them, right? So there is a supply and demand issue. So when there are fewer units, they can be less affordable because there's a lot of demand and not as much supply. I mean, I don't know that the new buildings necessarily have a lot of affordable units, but what I'm saying is that an older building may become more affordable if people leave it to go to a new building. So there is part of affordability that isn't literally just the rent that's charged. But I do happen to know actually that the new development on the Esplanade does have some subsidized units in there. So that is a new build that does have some subsidized units in it.
What percentage of the new build will have subsidized units?
We don't have a mandate to require affordable housing in the buildings. That's just not part of our mandate. So it really isn't something that we have the ability to enforce. So, but I guess just to go back to the issue of development at all, you know, to shut down development entirely doesn't really lead to affordable housing either. So that's just kind of the point I'm trying to get across, is that, you know, we need to not lose sight of development at all costs just because there isn't affordability in every unit. So that's the only Pardon? We discussed that at the last meeting. Yeah, it hasn't been done at this point, but I believe, Mr. McKinnon?
It wasn't recommended, but we're doing it anyways.
Okay, yeah. Do you want to speak to that, Ms. Connolly, the traffic?
Yeah, it is not uncommon for a traffic study to come before the public hearing. So it's not, just because it hasn't been done yet doesn't mean that it won't be done. And it is a request that comes forward from our department, the town's Department of Engineering and Public Works, who they request that if they feel it's necessary. So it sounds like that might be on the table, and maybe our director, McKinnon, might be able to better address that.
For the number of units, we didn't request one, but they said they're gonna do one anyways, and I saw a traffic camera up there last week, actually.
Thank you. Okay, sir, you have the microphone. Can you introduce yourself?
My name's Mitchell Sanford. I apologize because after I speak, I am going to leave. I've got 2 young kids. And my wife wants me home now. We live at 7 George Street. We purchased it 2 years ago. Shared with the group here that I poured a lot of money into it then. One of the things that I kept looking at is that it seems like the urban corridor policy permits buildings up to 36 feet tall is how I read it. And maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like we're talking here about a building that's a minimum of 76 feet. Depending on the peak of the roof, it could reach, I don't know, 80, 85 feet, depending on how that is. Where I first come is to say, you know, we're talking about a building that's twice the height of like, you guys developed a policy.
I think if I can just interject and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Fox or Ms. Connolly, but you might have been reading the as of right developments,
Yes.
which would mean they wouldn't come before this committee. So they would just be able to apply for a building permit and throw that building up, okay?
Are they meant to be guidelines? Or just
The as of right they need to be followed, but Mr. Johnstone submitting an application to this committee means that we are in a development agreement process. So there is back and forth, and this is the 5-step process that we follow. So the submission that he has made right now has a height of 76.4 feet, which we have been discussing tonight as likely too high for the building, or for the neighborhood. So that's been discussed, and 48.2 feet has been brought to the attention of the committee because that is what the bylaw sets out, because it abuts a general residential neighborhood which you live in.
the final 2 things is, I mean, the parking podium being 0.7 meters from a property line. We've heard a couple comments about water mitigation or capture. Unless you're capturing water and transporting it away from the property, or capturing water and, you know, evaporating it through the use of heat, you have to either put it back into the sewer or back into the ground in that area. So, I mean, there's a lot of fancy talk, but at the end of the day, you know, water has to go somewhere. If the podium fills up the lot, the water has to go to the surrounding lots. Like, it's simple math. I don't necessarily need a comment on that, but just so that everybody sort of follows along with where that goes. I mean, that's how water works.
I do think, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I do think it's important, as I mentioned at the last meeting, which I think you were at, is that Mr. McKinnon ensures that every development does not lead to any more water leaving the lot than currently is.
I mean,
Okay, so there may be issues. It may be that this development may actually mitigate some of those issues, but we have been told time and time again that no water will leave the development and travel to other buildings.
I mean,
other lots.
I apologize for this coming out as combative. You know, you get a roof done and they say it's a 25-year guarantee, and then you've got a leak. You know, I feel like that's the same thing when it comes to these water mitigation things. I mean, under certain conditions, they believe that there's water mitigation, but to measure what soil compaction is going to be over 25 years, to understand how the rain will fall and what the storms will look like, I mean, they can't measure that. The bottom line is if you fill up the lot, including the area below the surface within 0.7 meters, they can take steps, I'm sure, but to believe that those steps will be sufficient now and for the next 25, 50 years is hard for me to believe. I'll leave that to you guys. And then, one of the final things is I listened to Golf Street and I listened to the concerns about the one residential house on Clark Street. I appreciate the care that's been put in by council to that one impacted homeowner there. And that building, mind you, is being built on a lot that's 40% larger than this lot. So we've got a lot that's 40% smaller surrounded. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Final thing before I get in trouble and I have to get home. Again, I'm not familiar with how council works, but to think that we are at a second meeting, I'd love to know when council takes a stance. I mean, we've got 12 town employees here being paid by, and everybody deserves a chance to apply, but just because you buy a lot doesn't mean you get to come and apply for whatever you want. I mean, there has to be a point prior to too many meetings where we say, look, this isn't going anywhere. And I'm hoping that that's a path that the councilors are moving down, where we don't continue having multiple meetings dancing around what this is going to look like when it's clear that there's going to be a lot of pushback from the neighborhood. So.
Sorry, yes. I have Councillor McGrath in the queue first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just with regards to the water concerns, Mr. Johnstone had mentioned earlier that he said that he believed, he had been assured, I think, and I want to try and remember the words as correctly as you said them, that you had been assured that you were capturing more. And the intent of a stormwater management plan, which every development has to have, is to ensure that less water is leaving the site than is currently now. I wonder, Mr. Johnstone, if you would be able to address whether you've had a stormwater management plan created and address those concerns. And I'd also like to remind you, as tempting as it is to turn and talk to the gentleman specifically, the microphones are not here for us in the room. I can hear everybody clearly without the microphones. This is for the broadcast, so if you could just fight the temptation to look directly at who you're addressing and talk to the microphone, that would be appreciated for everybody watching from home. Thank you.
Certainly, and I understand it's a good question. So we do have engineers on our team who are helping with the water management plan. I'm not an engineer, but we do have them involved in the design.
Deputy Mayor Thomas.
Maybe, Ms. Connolly, you could just describe the process a little bit, because there's a bit of a confusion. People keep referring to us as council. We are not council, right? We're a planning advisory committee. There's 3 councillors on here, and that's it. Eventually, the process is that the recommendation comes from this committee, either thumbs up, thumbs down, or some thumbs up and some thumbs down. Doesn't matter. At some point, unless it's rejected by this committee, and you can clarify this for me, it will go to council for a decision. And at that time, there will be a public hearing in which you can come and talk to the council, which makes the decision. We are a recommending body. We are not a decision-making body as far as this going forward or not. But I'll leave the final word on that, because I don't know if we can cancel a project here or not. We've never done that before, so I'm out over my skis right now.
Yeah, you've explained it very well, and thank you. Yeah, and just to the previous point that you made, and apologies for not being able to speak to you directly to your face, but it is when you purchase a lot and you do, if the land use bylaw so allows, you can apply for anything that is permitted in the bylaw, or something in this case is a development agreement where it's not specifically allowed in the zone as of right, but the developer has a dream and they want to build something, so they're going to try and see if council agrees with that dream. And here we are in the process of evaluating it and to making sure that it meets the reality of everybody else. So to the point that you made so well there, Deputy Mayor, we are in the process, to my mind, acknowledge PAC is not able to cancel a application. However, the applicant is able to withdraw it. If they see that there is a huge amount of public pushback, they don't feel like they have the support of any of the advisory members, then they are certainly able to withdraw that of their own volition. But you're right, this committee would make a recommendation which council would take into consideration prior to making the final decision at that time.
I think it's important too, if you could perhaps explain for some of the people the zoning change that's happened and what that means for the as-of-right options.
Yep, I can definitely speak to that too. And there has been a zoning change which has allowed, somebody referenced the previous application for a 2-story, 6-unit building in the past. That was under the previous land use bylaw and municipal plan. Those documents have changed. As of November of 2023, Town Council has adopted new land use bylaw and municipal plan, which allows for different things. And that's what these maps are that we're showing up here. We have the policy area, and Director Fox kind of talked about that for the West Prince area and what those impacts would be for the policy area and zones. So all of these zones, you see there's no R1, R2, R3. They've been changed. We have general residential, urban corridor. All of these new zones now apply to a lot of the similar areas, but a lot of other areas, and the types of uses that are permitted with them has changed slightly and quite a bit in others. So what may have been permitted on this site in the past has maybe changed a little bit to what the current appetite is for development on this parcel in this neighborhood. But that's council's decision to make.
Thank you very much. Okay. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Joe Andrew, 361 Robby. Right, I live 2 doors down from the future development. The huge concern that we have, since we have an awful lot of older folks that live right around us, right, part of the problem is with your parking that comes in so quickly. If someone pulls out, they're going to get hit because they're not going to see somebody that's on the sidewalk, right? Either using a walker or a cane. Myself, I ride a mobility scooter, right? And I'm very, very in tune with the mobility and accessibility of our community. The other thing is, when this building, if this is developed, all around us, right? We have to remember this. All around us, our heat bills go up, our light bills go up, right? All these things are going to affect us in that neighborhood, right? Then there's the safety of more people, right? I don't know if the rest of my neighbors know this or not, right? But we've got quite a bit of crime in our little area, right? Is that going to get worse? Right? Because we have a beautiful park that's right across the street from us, right? And even at this point, we are finding syringes and needles living in our little park. Is that going to get worse too? Right? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Can I speak to that briefly? I don't think you were here at the last meeting, and I want to just, I guess, address you directly, but at the first meeting, I had my property manager here. My property manager who manages over 500 units. She's from the area, and she used to work in Vancouver on East Hastings Street. So one of the things I brought up last time was, and this is part of my mindset as a person who lives locally, is I do care about that. And the property management that I'm going to have in place after this project is built is local and it's professional. That type of management will reduce the type of problems that you're bringing up there. And that's intentional.
Mr. Johnson, will the property manager live in the building?
The property manager has her own home, so probably not, but we will certainly have on-site supers.
Superintendent? Okay. Someone else have the microphone or wish to have the microphone?
Yeah, sure.
David Elmer, 65 Longworth. So I'm in the house where Longworth goes down and disappears at the lower edge there. on the right-hand side. So I'll come out my driveway and I'll be able to look down on the vista of Longworth Avenue and see this behemoth in front of me. It reminds me of the rooms in St. John's, Newfoundland. This
Thank you.
bloody huge thing stuck in the middle of our residential buildings. That's my...
Unfortunately, my architect's not here to take that personally, but
That's what I think. What's the roof going to be made of? Are you going to have shingles or metal?
metal.
A proper thing. Yeah. Hello, is that better? Okay. There's a lot of balconies. Is this pickleball court? It says it's indoor, but is it just going to be like a sort of Florida room that's enclosed?
It's going to be fully inside the building.
Fully inside the building.
Soundproofed. And,
because I read about there were people in Halifax recently, neighbours of a building development. No, it was a court where pickleball was regularly played, and the noise of the players was such that I think Halifax Council had to do something about it. And I notice in this that there's nothing, there isn't a sub, what do you call it here, policies for discussion. There isn't one on noise mentioned in here, but maybe there should be. Over and out.
good feedback, thank you.
Hi, I'm Emily Riley. I live at 28 Hingley Avenue. If you look at the map, if you noticed to the immediate right of the property where there are a number of properties that are on the floodplain, that's my property. I also speak for my neighbor who can't attend these meetings because of mobility issues. Can I just tell you how heartbreaking it was to go to her house and explain this to her? Because 13 years ago, she and her partner fought the good fight to make sure that their backyard did not turn into somebody else's balcony. And she's devastated that she's got to do it again. And she doesn't know that she has it in her, so she's asked us if we can speak for her. There is nothing in this property that offers anything to my property. There will be a huge development feet away from my property line. Our property is on the floodplain because we're approximately 3 to 5 feet below this property. So the height of this property is already augmented by the fact that our properties are lower because just how the floodplain works there. I appreciate the solar study, but it does not accurately show what will happen in our backyard. And on top of that, those are not empty lots. That's my backyard. That's my garden. That's where I sit in my hammock. Empty is subjective. And so to use the empty part of my lot to offer your lot some lovely green views, some trees, because there will be no trees on your property because they're going to have to be cut down because of the underground parking. There will be no root systems there. When the picture shows the front of currently 373, there are some trees in those, and those are on my property. Those trees in the back there, you can see, sort of to the right. Most of those trees are on our properties. So I would love for Mr. Johnstone to join our neighborhood. I would encourage him to fix that house up and move in. We would love him as a neighbor. That's what that house is meant for. That's the Reed house. Yeah.
To be clear, that's not my suggestion. Please don't speak.
That's the Reed house. That house has history. I recognize that time marches forward, but to march forward in a way that destroys the living life of the neighborhood is not something that we can ever functionally support. I appreciate that Mr. Johnstone has done his best to make something so big more palatable by including things like balconies and some pickleball and And well, it's wonderful to have those things in an apartment, but those are inside the apartment, and it doesn't change the size. It doesn't change the height. It doesn't change the sun. It doesn't change the traffic. I know your other buildings. I imagine the inside is lovely. I imagine it would be a great building to live in. I wish it were anywhere else, but on a property where it is so jammed into the available space that it really destroys anything that looks like the rest of the neighborhood. So we welcome Mr. Johnstone to join our neighborhood as a resident in the building. We would love him to fix it up. We would love him to come to our neighborhood events, but it's a hard pill to swallow to look at something that is so big on such a small lot in such an enclosed space.
Thank you, everybody, for your comments. Does anyone from the committee wish to say anything more before we move on to our next item on the agenda? Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly we hear the comments from the gallery. I'll speak to Mr. Andrew first about crime, because I know I talked with you about this recently, and the possibly anecdotal, but there are studies that show that, hey, more eyes on the street means less crime. When you have more people out, you are more visible. And the anecdotal study of the taco stand that transformed a neighborhood because more people were out and more people started meeting their neighbors and more people were on the street and crime went down. More people on the street can reduce crime. Not necessarily more people if they are just getting in their cars and driving away. That may or may not help, but this is just one little thing talking crime. Ms. Riley, you and I spoke last meeting about the previous development. Kind of wish you hadn't bought it now, because if there had been a 6-unit, 2-story building, that would have been, I think, a much more transitional step toward the growth that the town is experiencing versus the 6 stories that is proposed. Because I think, maybe that would have been lovely. And Mr. Johnstone, you've been invited to go move into the neighborhood. I don't know how big your family is, but I suspect you would fit into the overhoused if you moved into that home. That is a very large home, a lot of space for, I don't know how big your family is, but for you, if it was just you, that would certainly be a lot of space for one person. That's a lot of space for 5 or 6 peoples, honestly. And just, again, anecdotally, I have a lot of constituents who talk to me about being overhoused. They've raised families, the children have all moved away, a spouse has perhaps died, so it's either they themselves or they and their spouse, and they have too much space for just the 2 people. They would love to move, they can't find anywhere affordable to go. So there are a lot of bottlenecks there. I just wanted to provide some feedback on some of the things that I'm hearing. Certainly the tarp on the roof would love to see that fixed. But I understand why you'd be reticent to put much time or money into a property if you're planning on tearing it down and building something new. But yeah, just to reiterate, I'm hearing the comments. I think the entire committee is hearing the comments, and we thank you for being here tonight.
Councillor Graham.
I hope that you go away in the spirit that these meetings are supposed to happen, and that you realize that it is a back and forth, it is a bit of a negotiation, and we have many developers in front of us all the time, and it has proven to be an extremely successful, efficient process that we go through, and there is give and take, and I hope you go away in the spirit of that. The last thing that I wanted to mention, as I mentioned to all developers that come before us, when you are considering the bedrooms in your development, I always like to encourage a 3-bedroom to accommodate families. At this time, I don't see that you have any, but we are a family-friendly community and would love to have more apartments to be able to accommodate families. Thank you.
Thanks for the feedback.
Okay, thank you. As everyone has indicated, that's some feedback for you, Mr. Johnstone, and we will see you at the next step of the application process.
Thank you, everyone, for your time and feedback. It's called the hot seat because I'm turning around. It's actually getting warm. Thanks for everything, Carol.
Thank you. We'll be in touch.
I wanted to mention, so my architect is really.
Those of you who are leaving, if you wouldn't mind doing so quickly and quietly so we can move on to our next item, that would be appreciated. Thank you. And the next item on our agenda is 60 Gulf Street. And this is Ms. Connolly's project again, application again. It is at step 3, 4, 3. Sorry, I usually try to look up in the top corner there, but it doesn't say on that one. Okay. Do we want to have a stretch our legs, or we're just going to get right to it?
A 2-minute recess to allow the clear might be worthwhile.
What it's still here for. Okay. Ms. Connolly, go ahead, please.
I'm ready. Thank you. All right, as you mentioned, this is 60 Gulf Street. This is a step 3 application, so this is the full policy review. Just to re-familiarize everybody with the site, it is 60 Gulf, across from the TAC grounds. Subject lands are 0.88 of an acre in area and have approximately 73 meters of frontage on Gulf Street. Lands are within the regional service policy area, which is that purple. Multiple unit residential policies with more than 18 dwelling units shall be considered by development agreement as per policy RS 36 of the town's municipal planning strategy. Lands are also zoned urban corridor UC with a small portion within that 1 to 100 floodway fringe as noted on the map that you see. And there's another policy that also requires larger residential developments with more than 12 units be considered by development agreement as well. Here we have some nice snowy photos of the subject site. We see Truro Toyota in the background. 14 Clark Street is there as noted. Here we have it from a different view, kind of looking toward the golf club property with the Pentecostal Assemblies Church there, or administrative offices in the middle. Here we see it from the other direction with the Chow family up there at the top right of the photo, and 14 Clark again. So, just for reference, this has come up, and there was some question about what had been the previous approved development application. So this was the submission back in 2022 or 2022. The applicant, who has now purchased this site and the associated development agreement, has stated previously that this is now cost prohibitive. This exact building with the requirements that go with it, which include 5 stories and 2 levels of below-grade parking and 76 units, is now cost prohibitive to build, which is why this application has come back in front of council for reconsideration, as well as this committee. So again, as mentioned, this is at step 3, where we have the benefit of hearing some of the feedback from the committee member, the community members through the public survey, and we also have the full policy review. So again, this is the development proposal and the site plan associated with that. So the building's kind of in the middle of the site, pulled to the street. The entrance is closer to the Chow family restaurant site. It's bi-directional, so cars going both ways. With, actually this one needs to be updated because there's 16 spaces above ground and 50 that are below ground. So we see the previous submission on the left and the modified submission on the right, showing the change that the developer made in direct relation to the comments that were given at previous committee meetings. So again, this is a conceptual rendering showing how that site is projected to fit in with the community from an aerial photo point of view. Here, this is another parking podium that will be built below the building. So again, this also has to be updated. So there's 50 spaces going to be within the actual parking structure, and then the combined with the above ground parking spaces. So roughly 11 units per level. Here we see a typical proposed unit layout of those units within the building. They range in size. Here we see the development proposal and what that proposed rendering would look like from the designer's point of view. So this has changed, and we'll go through what those changes. So the original submission is in the top left. That was what the developer came forward initially. Based on feedback given by this committee, they then modified the submission, which is what you see in the top right-hand corner. And again, based on committee feedback, they re-evaluated the submission and then have come back with what you see on the bottom. So this rendering and the associated drawings were what was brought forward into the public information meeting that the developer held which was also a request of this committee. So that was held on March 18th over at the Truro Public Library from noon until 2 in the afternoon, as well as 5 to 7 in the evening. So you can see the evolution of the design in these renderings. We have some more conceptual aspects to have a look at. The golf cart is apparently legit and could potentially be a thing there. The bottom two photos are, well, the bottom left is the rear and the south side, so close to Chow family, or sorry, north side, and then the other rendering is from the front and the south side of the building. So again, the proposal overall is 5-story proposal, 59 units of residential dwelling units, 19 one-bedroom, 42 bedroom, 30% lot coverage with a bit more impermeable surface, obviously, because there's that podium below, as well as the parking area. Again, 66 parking spaces with 50 below grade and 16 surface, which is a parking ratio of a little over 1 space per unit. And amenity space, which includes, there's a common room, there's some green space that's outside, which you can see in that rendering on the left-hand side, and balconies for the units. So, as mentioned before, those are the policies that enable council to consider this application. So, as part of the review and analysis, we balanced the submission with the policies that are within the town's municipal planning strategy. It aligns with many of the policies, including increased residential densities in the downtown or close to the downtown, new dwelling units on existing infrastructure, which would be considered intensification versus sprawl. So sprawl would be kind of moving outside of the really well-developed areas, and creating walkable neighborhoods. So here I've just did a little bit of a map to show the radius. So the yellow circle shows the 500-meter radius, and the pink circle is the 1 kilometer radius. So for a lot of people, that's comfortable walking distance. So you kind of see where that development proposal, which is here where the star is, lies within those, or the radiuses come out from that point. So again, so let me get my notes out here. Because of the location, it is expected to create more walkability, as the site is already currently connected by sidewalk to the downtown, but it is also expected to allow people to not use a personal vehicle or rely on a personal vehicle, where they have the ability to walk, cycle, or use other modes of active transportation to get where they need to go. Potential issues include building height, residential density, traffic, and stormwater management. So as for the height, it's 5 stories. There's not a lot of 5-story buildings in the immediate area. So this graphic was actually pulled from the previous applications. There are multiple applications. It's been modified slightly with the kind of building size that is proposed here today. So the proposed structure is higher than the nearby development, but it's not expected to create a compatibility issue given the variety of building sizes and the lack of development pattern within the neighborhood. That's what establishes that baseline measurement. So with a Toyota, with a car dealership, with a restaurant, with a commercial, like not even commercial, it's a professional and office space building and a golf course, it's really a mixed use community. So there's not really any standard to measure that against, as maybe we would have saw with the previous application, where there is a lot of low density residential. This doesn't have that. So staff support the 5-story height limit at this location, as it is expected to have minimal impact on neighboring properties or on the adjacent streetscape as well. Staff are recommending that council not apply the urban corridor zone height limits, which are 43.3 feet, and we recommend that they not be applied to this development. Density is another issue. The density is overall quite high when you compare it to similar residential density. So in comparison, single-family dwelling would be about 20, the density is 20 units per acre. This one is quite a bit more at 70. The proposal, though, is situated within that mixed-use area, which we already talked about, and that area generally has been converting from older single-family homes to multi-unit dwellings or commercial uses. And while it is high, the density, in comparison to the typical low-density single-detached homes, which we see at 14 Clark Street, as well as 352 and 354 Prince Street, don't feel like that's going to be a compatibility issue. Also, separation of land uses, some separation is ideal, but over separation can prevent the vibrant places that contain a mixture of complementary uses, which this site really has the opportunity to do. And staff do expect that this proposal to be compatible with the existing densities and mixed uses or mix of uses in the area, as well as those that we expect in the future. Traffic. This was definitely identified as a concern during previous development applications, and there was a traffic impact statement prepared as part of a previous submission. No significant impacts were found at that time. However, since that was done and completed, the TAC grounds have been revitalized, and that's really near completion. It has also been rebranded. So as part of that, the director or the town's engineering and public works department have asked for an updated traffic impact statement to be submitted. So that will be required prior to council agreeing to enter into any development agreement. Review by other departments. As this proposal, as any other proposal, we send it all out to the various departments for comment. No specific comments were received from the urban forester until a landscape plan was received. Fire inspector had a really specific comment about the fire department connection, which can be accommodated, is my understanding, as well as from the building official, and the town's engineering office is asking for a stormwater management plan prior to council entering into any development agreement. Along with that traffic impact statement, no concerns from a Parks and Rec point of view. However, they do make the statement that a community garden would be great for residents, and no other concerns have been noted. Here is the summary of the public participation process. So, to date, and this has been updated from your reports, to date we had received 15 responses, so 2 in favor, 12 opposed, and 1 had no opinion. The development application sign had been posted as well, and this is continuously updated, that part of the website. And we assume that the surveys were submitted in response to a mail-out that was sent to the 27 property owners within that 150-meter radius of the site. And again, that's information about the public information meeting that was held on March 18th. Unfortunately, we only had 10 people show up, and that includes the town councilors that were present on that day, so we didn't have great attendance, which was interesting. This survey will also stay open up until the public hearing. Next steps. So this, today we expect that the Planning Advisory Committee will make their recommendation, which will then be brought forward to council at the public hearing to make their recommendation. Public hearing is expected to be held on May 5th at 1 p.m. And council and or the PAC may make any conditions or request any additional information as they see fit. So my staff's recommendation is to approve the development with conditions. So council approve the application to enter into a development agreement subject to a stormwater management plan being prepared and approved by the town's Director of Engineering and Public Works, as well as a landscaping plan reviewed by the town's urban forester and accepted by the town's development officer. And that concludes my presentation. Madam Chair, also we have the developer here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, thank you, Ms. Connolly. I just wanted to ask one question. A few slides back, you had all the departments who had reviewed the application and had no comments or were positive or whatever. And the traffic authority, we have asked for that to be updated on the basis of the fact that the TAC grounds are being developed and there will be a lot of traffic there at times. So I guess I just wonder why we are not waiting for that. Why are we only making that a condition of a development agreement being entered into as opposed to the recommendation of the project at all?
It could go either way. So if we feel, if you, the committee members, feel that there would be a substantial impact or traffic concern, that it would make an impact on your decision that you would make, you can ask for that to be provided before you make a recommendation to council, I guess, or you recommend that council have that information prior to making their final decision. You can say that it has happened, like with the Stanfields development. Also, conversely, we've said that council could agree to enter into a development agreement subject to the town's Department of Engineering and Public Works being satisfied with the traffic impact statement and the results of that. And if they are, then the town can enter into the development agreement, or if they're not, it would be a no. It would be a no.
Do others have any comments on that? Just because I know that is what we've noticed in a lot of the public comments. Deputy Mayor Thomas.
Yeah, just in regards to that, Madam Chairman, I would suggest that we add that, as you stated, a traffic impact study as part of as what's required before an agreement can be signed. Yeah, and it has to come to the satisfaction of the town engineer.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what you stated.
Right, and to
Yeah.
clarify, so
Yeah.
to clarify, you agree with the recommendation that
Yeah.
it could come after council agreeing to enter
Yeah,
into a development agreement?
I would say so. I'm not an expert on traffic, and if someone comes back and says that it's fine, it's fine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple of questions, though. Is that fine if I go ahead with questions, or do you want
Yes,
to
yeah.
pursue that?
Nope,
further?
go ahead.
Okay. Just a couple of questions. I didn't see on it, and I think it's got to go before the landscape plan has to go before the urban forester. And what I'm concerned about is I didn't see the distance between the underground parkade and the front property line. And I just want to make sure that that is very clear so that when the urban forester takes a look at it, they can determine whether or not boulevard trees or, trees beside the sidewalk, street side trees can be put in there. I mean, they're in the depiction, they're very nice, but I'm not convinced that maybe there's enough room there for them, and I'd like that to be looked at. So if that could be done. The other thing that I have is the height I'll just comment on the height. The height was always a compromise. I remember when I first came onto council 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago, it was an 8-story building that was being proposed, and there's a lot of opposition to that. And it ended up, I wanted 4, and it said, well, anyway, back and forth, and we all kind of came to, well, you got to compromise here. So like 5-story was the compromise. And so I think that this is what's before us, and I think that's why you're not seeing as much, though there's opposition, not as much vocal opposition, because I think we're all exhausted. The other thing is just the facade on the building. When I look at it, it looks great. By the way, every rendition is better. I wonder if there'd be even a better one if we had another rendition, because we're on our way up. At any rate,
2022 one was nice too.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, that red, that looks like brick. Is that what that is? Like, how close does the developer have to stay to the materials that are depicted in this? Because when it's built, I might see a bunch of metal siding on there, right? Because it's cheaper or less expensive, I should use the word. So can you tell me about the rules regarding facade and what's depicted and what we approve? If you could just go through that, please.
So when we write the development agreements, we can be really specific about materials, or we could be more general. In this case, there is no brick proposed. That reddish color is cladding, whether it's wood or whether it's metal. We probably wouldn't make a distinction in the development agreement unless we say no vinyl siding or something like that, which is what we do sometimes. Should they want to change from that red cedar color to green, let's say, there's nothing that's written in the development agreement to restrict it. It's more of the roof line is really strict. We say general adherence to the renderings as shown. So the jutting out and the indentions into the building, so where they have the balconies, if they
the form is pretty much has to be kept.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The cladding material, no.
Right. So I would just like some consideration by the town planning department in that regard, because I think it is, every building has its location, and we talked about the one on Prince Street. Location, I believe, is not right for that size of building. Here, I believe it is okay. And that, but I think that bears out by the fact that it kind of sits alone in many respects. But I do think it deserves consideration to be somewhat of an attractive building to the streetscape. A lot of people are going to come into town, they're going to go to the, this, that, and everything else. And it would be nice if it was, it's a high-profile building is what I'm getting at. And so every site is different. When it's a high-profile site, I think we need to have greater consideration to appearance. So I'm just putting that in. So some attention needs to be paid for that. And let me go through my notes here. This is for the town engineer. It's only related to this. And I know we're getting on here in time, but if you could I was in Halifax last week, and I went through some side streets that are obviously concerned about heavy traffic flow. And so what was happening is they had these kind of large lumps as you went down the street, and you could go 40K, no problem. Right, I wouldn't lose that of control.
They're called speed humps.
But if I was doing 70K,
yeah, they're called
I'd be in
speed
trouble.
humps.
Yeah, so.
And there's numerous ways of doing traffic calming, but the proponent will have to do a traffic impact statement, and we'll review it.
And if needed, is that a possibility?
They're not.
It's not something you like?
No. It's not something we want to get into.
Thank you very much.
No, and they have to be proven to be needed.
Okay, thank you.
Just on that point, though, Mr. McKinnon, I mean, I noticed the same thing. There's some neighborhoods near Dalhousie, and they've basically made a decision that those neighborhoods will have slower traffic because they want to encourage kids to be able to grab their basketball out in the street, and so I mean, I hear what you're saying from an engineering perspective, but I don't think we should dismiss the concerns of people who have young families in the neighborhood who, might have concerns about increased traffic, even if statistically speaking, there probably won't be any increase in, issues. I don't think we should be too quick to just dump all that, those.
Only dismissive because we've been down this road many times before, and there's nothing that proves that it works, and we've also studied the traffic on the street, and there's no higher rate of speeding on Smith Avenue than there is any other street in town. Like we've been down this road numerous times. I'm only dismissing it based on reports we've already done.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Connolly, there were some concerns raised from some of the other departments. You mentioned the fire connection. That concern can be accommodated, and actually I suppose I should direct that to the developer at the back there. The fire connection can be moved to accommodate. Yep. For those who can't hear him nodding his head, he is nodding his head at the back. The traffic study, there was a comment, where was it? Somebody mentioned something specifically, giant impact on traffic at stop sign that is already an issue area. So I would direct that to our traffic authority, Mr. McKinnon. Are we aware, you say you've done a lot of studies already, are we aware of any issues?
I don't know whose comment you're reading, and I don't know what stop sign they're talking about.
Well, I don't know who I am either because it's an anonymous survey, but
okay, well, I don't have the survey in front of me. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, they just say giant impact on traffic at stop sign that is already an issue area. I'm just wondering if you're aware of an issue area in that area.
I don't know what stop sign they're talking about.
Okay. Might it be the Chow family?
It might be the one at Prince Street would be my assumption because I don't. Yeah, that would be my assumption as well.
We're not aware of any, there have been any excessive accidents or any reports of accidents in that area.
Collision?
And no, or collisions, accidents. Nor typically, if Truro Police do have a increased number of collisions in the area, they would be talking to the engineering department about that. And again, we don't have any reports that confirm that.
Okay. And certainly the number of collisions reported, that's part of why we put in that roundabout at Willow Street and McClure's Mills, correct? That was a response to collision rates? Perfect, thank you. The golf cart is a nice touch. Mr. McKinnon, is the golf cart legal on those roads? Because I'm picturing someone moves into that building, they have their own golf cart, and they bring it over to the golf course. You know, I picture my father in his retirement driving his little golf cart down the road to the golf course, his own personalized cart with his own touches. Is that something? Is that road legal?
I would guess not. It wouldn't be licensed for the road. They probably would have to be on the sidewalk.
Lovely.
Exactly.
Is it possible to maybe address a couple of concerns at once? And we're looking at, you know, the traffic impact, wanting to slow down the traffic. Is it possible for perhaps a protected mobility lane there that could accommodate the width of a golf cart, as well as encourage all the other walking and cycling that we expect people to be doing in this area that is so close to the downtown area?
I'd have to talk to a traffic engineer, but I can't imagine that would want to encourage the golf carts to be on the street.
Okay, just checking. The accessibility parking, that was another one. There was a comment there, Ms. Connolly, I don't know if you could bring that back up again, I can't remember who brought that. Building inspector said accessible parking spaces will need to meet the new Accessibility Act. I have unfortunately not had time to review the new Accessibility Act. Is that going to have an impact on the number of parking spaces available? I assume the act is saying that either more accessible parking spaces need to be created or the existing spaces have to be larger or protected. It can either, I'll throw that out to anybody who can answer that question.
It's my understanding that both of those things have changed. So the size for an accessible parking space has become wider, as well as the way that the required number is calculated has also changed.
Okay, so that would have an overall impact on the number of parking spaces available. Do we have those numbers?
I don't believe so. It was my understanding that when our building official reviewed it, that the number of spaces was adequate and met the requirement. It was just that the physical size of them needed to be changed.
Okay, and just that physical size change is not going to impact that overall number?
He didn't believe so because they could just change the noted accessibility space. They could just move it so that it would comply.
Fantastic. And my final comment is on the suggested community garden. I do know I've had a number of constituents reach out to me saying, hey, we'd love to have some more community gardens in town. If this is something that could be accommodated, I think it would be a very welcome addition to the neighborhood. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Councillor Graham.
It's great that we can be friends again. You've come a long way, and I'd like to congratulate you on that. I think that your willingness to listen to our committee and the back and forth, you should be the poster boy. So thank you. I think we've really done well on this development, and I'm really proud of the work that we've done together to make it successful. Mike, I have just one question for Ms. Connolly, or you, it doesn't matter. What was the date of the public information session?
March 18th.
So, I was hopeful that some of these negative responses hadn't seen the most recent the most recent renderings, but I guess they were available
They
when
came after the fact, yes.
Okay, well, that's that. But the only other comment, and again, the same comment that I make to every single developer, would have been nice to see some 3-bedroom apartments. But I know that that's a cost analysis that you do. You're not required to have them, but again, nice to be able to accommodate families. But it's at your discretion. Thank you, and again, congratulations. I think the work we've done is exceptional, so.
Okay, so we have a recommendation from Ms. Connolly that we submit that council approve the application to enter into the development agreement. Yeah, is there a, sorry? Oh, apologies, sorry, yes. Is there anyone from the gallery who wishes to speak? Thank you. No, don't, thank you.
Hi, my name is Rhea Parsons. I have a few questions just in general that I've noticed through the slideshow. You had mentioned that you had a lot of changes that need to be updated on that slideshow itself. Is that just because everything's been changing so quickly, or I feel like everything's getting rushed is why I'm asking.
Nope, that's definitely due to my error. They did submit and I think what we're referring to are these two. It's the parking plan that it did not get changed for the updated parking plan, and there was one other thing that I believe I just didn't update the new versus old. It was the site plan with the new details on it.
Yes.
The site plan itself hasn't changed, but the details that are listed on the site plan have changed, and that is absolutely my error because they did provide it.
Perfect. And then you did have the updated surveys on there as well, correct?
Correct, because I pulled them today just before the meeting.
Okay, and that's what I inquired last week about the surveys, and I tried to get into most of our community on West Prince because I didn't know how to get the surveys myself until I came here and I had a Friday evening off. My question here is everything with the mail out going out from the March 19th and the information session being the March 18th, is that normal for that to happen so rapidly, to be here already this upcoming meeting? Is that normal for everything, for developments?
The public information meetings generally are a new thing with the scale of development that's happening. That's my impression, is that we've just, as a town, not seen this kind of development. So we need these extra meetings to address the concerns, or at least have the chance for the neighborhood residents to kind of come out and speak to the developer one-on-one about them. The timing changes due to availability of the spaces. So the only real requirement that they were given this developer had to have the meeting before the third planning advisory committee meeting, which is where we are today. So I would say it's not unusual. It's expected that the previous applicant will have their public information well before the third PAC meeting, which would be also great because you have that benefit of time. But no, there's no strict requirement as to when they must be held.
Okay, just because everything seems a little bit rushed on what's going on. I know we had made a recommendation about talking to possibly the adjacent community, and everything's changing with a new advisory committee that I'm actually a part of now, that I just got that email out from Jude Clyke and council members about creating that new one that we had talked about. And I know we said this is going to be exempt from that, and it's going to go forward. So everything is definitely moving quickly, which I know everything does like that. So in last response is to the traffic around the area, that stop sign, and now I live in that area right around it. My mom had my daughter in her vehicle in front of me. A vehicle that came to the stop sign by Cat Shack had turned in between us, and I was the third vehicle. Coming out of the Chow family, like right the exit by the tack rounds, a vehicle cut my mother off directly and almost had an accident right there. Yes, there may not be accidents, but there will be. It just hasn't happened because people are defensive drivers and they stop. But that was an accident that was right there. I wish we would have had our dash cam in. They're definitely going in. But traffic is a very big impact right there. People can barely manage the four-way stop by Toyota Cat Shack and the Fletcher's there. They can barely manage that. Where the yield sign's going over towards going on Juniper, people can barely handle that and turning there. They're always waiting for us to yield when we're turning off of our street itself. If that sounds confusing, please go take a little drive down there, go do a little circle, and you'll see exactly what we mean. People do not know how to manage that area. This stop sign here is a big influence. Like that should possibly be looked at to change to a four-way stop, maybe a blinking light like we have by Kia, Frank and Gino's and that, like a four-way with the flashing lights. So the impact there is definitely there. Thank you for your guys' time.
Yeah, it will, and it was also considered in the last one, and they said there wasn't enough impacts to warrant anything beyond just a single stop sign, if we were talking about golf at
Just to be clear, though.
And it will be reviewed again.
The difference we're discussing now is the fact that the tack grounds would, along in the project of the tack grounds, is a how many car parking lot?
The tack grounds, I don't know, but they did consider the amount of events that were going on at the tack grounds and the golf course before, and then the new one will take into account whatever is expected for the new uses at the tack grounds as well.
Aylmer again. we're talking here about sort of urban gardens or something like that. Down our way, there are 11 deer. They eat everything. Who's going to put any effort into an urban garden when it's just going to be destroyed? The place will, I mean, it looks all lovely and pretty upon the schematic there, but nobody's going to bother with it, and it'll just end up all litter and whatever.
You're not next in the queue. Councillor Graham.
I did have one more question that we always ask. When is your, if the application is approved at our public hearing, what is your anticipated start date? Oh.
You still wish to speak, Mr. Councilor McGrath, about the garden?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just about the community gardens. I would encourage you to visit the King Street Community Garden. It's all fenced in. I understand there are no issues with deer. I'd love to meet you there someday. We can have a chat and take a look around and hear more about your concerns. It does have to be done right. The deer eat everything, including the hostas in front of our house. My partner loves to keep the hostas because she likes to see the deer come by. So she just watches them come up, eat whatever is left of the hostas, and then they move on again. And then they eat the lupins, and then they try to eat. They've tested the thyme, they've tested the lambs here. But yeah, we don't have our fenced front yard.
I'm just thinking of it in terms of the landscaping idea. That they eat everything. Will the landscaping be kept up?
Yeah, I expect any sort of community garden would be a fenced area that would keep the deer out, at least 6 feet. I've been told that deer can jump a 5-foot fence. Yeah, so my fences are 6 feet. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Yes.
My name's Ida. Myself personally, I don't think the building should be as high as it is.
Sorry, I don't know if that microphone is on.
Okay. My name's Ida. I don't think the building should be as tall as it is. Number one, it defeats the purpose of the one that the Blinkhorns wanted to put in. That was too high. He has to go back, reconstruct everything. You guys talking about water. Water got its own mind. It's like the ball field. That, I have waterfront property right now because they dug and it's all there. In the good rain we had before, it was all flowing over, right? So you can't control the water. And you start digging underground, putting in underground parking, you're gonna get problems. Traffic, you can't get out by the Chow family by that stop sign. The cars coming up from, turning off of Jupiter and that, you can't get out. You gotta wait there. And then they say there's no traffic problem? Oh yeah, there is. What else was I gonna say? There's so many things that gotta be considered before you go forward to the next step. And as far as sending out, I have a question, my dear. I don't know even your name. When you send out the letters to the residents, what's on the envelope? What's name? You put a name on it?
Yes. It's the name of the property owner.
It is go directly to
Yes.
them? Okay. Because, I mean, I think I live quite distance and I never got any. I'm not in the zone, remember? No? Nobody close there to? Toyota's the last.
For the radius they send out.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Well, anyway, that's all I have to say. I would reconsider before going forward, myself personally, and let people know more, because I look on here and the mailing date was the 19th. We had a meeting on the 18th. Come on, who got notice? If the mail went out on the 19th and we were meeting on an 18th. Look at the information they got there. The dates don't go. Can't get the information.
Do we want to clarify that, Ms. Connolly, that was the mail that the town sends out to any homeowner within 150 meters of the development?
And yes, and those mailouts are specifically to advertise for the upcoming public hearing. So there are timing restrictions that apply to that or conditions that apply to that. So while they're, and correct me if I'm wrong, Angela, but did we also include the details about the public meeting in the mail out, or was it just the public hearing in that specific ones? So we didn't include the public information meeting
Because it's not a formal part of the process. It's something that
Exactly.
the developer chose to do. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're just discussing the fact that under the requirements of the process, one of them is that homeowners within 150 meters of the development receive the notice in the mail. The developer does not have to have their own public engagement session, but there does have to be a public hearing. The notice that was sent out in the mail did provide the date for the public hearing, but your point that the public session that the developer chose to have is well taken, that it was, very close or overlapped with the date of the mail out. But there isn't a requirement for that mail out to give the date of the developer's public engagement session, because that's not actually a requirement of the process. It was something that this committee recommended to the developer to do, and some developers do it as sort of an extra step, but it's not a requirement and it isn't the subject of that notice. Just to clarify that, because I didn't want you to think that there was anything. Yeah, no, absolutely. If it could have been planned better, I think it would have been certainly better, but that was.
The public hearing is in May, you said?
Yes.
What occurs there? Is that like another step before finalizing everything, or is that just to announce that this is happening?
Yeah, so this committee makes a recommendation, but before council either approves or doesn't approve the project, there is that public engagement session.
And that one's May 4th, I believe I seen?
Correct.
So from meeting again now, because this has been on the dock about 3 times so far since the date in December, but yet we're waiting pretty much another whole other month before the next one?
Yeah, it's part of the process. So council has to actually set the public hearing date, so they have to do that at their next council meeting, which will be April's meeting.
Okay.
And then they have to wait till their following council meeting, which doesn't happen till May.
And is that open to the public as well?
It is, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, so we have a recommendation from the planner, and it indicates that council approved the application to enter into the development agreement for development consisting of 59 dwelling units, subject to the following conditions. The applicant submit a stormwater management plan prepared by a licensed professional and approved by the town's Director of Engineering and Public Works, and the applicant submit a landscape plan reviewed by the town's urban forester and accepted by the town's development officer. Go ahead. Yeah, so I was going to suggest, because we had discussed, I was just going to ask you, Deputy Mayor Thomas, are you in agreement with the language in condition 2, or did you want anything changed with that? That's with respect to the landscape plan. Are you okay with the language? I know you'd mentioned it.
It's fine.
Okay.
Ms. Connolly is aware of my request, and so I'll leave it at that. I know that you'll follow through with that, so
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, but I think we would take that "and" off of the first clause and then add it to the second, and then we would put number 3, the applicant submit a traffic impact statement, which is accepted by or acceptable to the town's Director of Engineering and Public Works.
Is that the normal process, Mr. McKinnon? That the applicant submits it, or do you do the traffic impact study?
No, the applicant's engineer does it.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question of
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon? Mr. McKinnon, you're right. I do remember in the past applications for development on this site that a traffic study had been done. Do you feel as though, and so the way it's worded now, you could use that to say it's okay. Do you believe with the upgrades to the to the TAC, which was it properly named already as a 2nd Battalion Athletic Facility? Okay, as a 2nd Construction Battalion Athletic Facility upgrades, is that traffic study sufficient, do you believe?
I don't know how much volume use that field's going to get. The engineer that's going to do the traffic impact statement will have to talk with Parks and Rec people and find out the numbers. I don't know the numbers.
Thank you very much. It's fine as you've depicted it.
And Deputy Mayor Thomas, did you want anything in our recommendation regarding materials?
Not that. I've made that request, and I think it's a reasonable request, and it's up to the developer and the planning department to follow through with that. And I don't want to put a restriction on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one small nitpicky thing. If we are adding a condition for the traffic impact statement, I know that currently Mr. McKinnon is the Director of Public Works and the Town Traffic Authority, but I think we should be wording it so that it is going to the Town Traffic Authority, not to the Director of Public Works, especially if that ever is a different person than Director McKinnon, then it should be noted that it was reviewed by the Town Traffic Authority and not by the Director of Public Works. Those should be just a small distinction, but if anybody's ever looking at this in the past and wonders why Director of Public Works was reviewing a traffic impact statement, it's just that it happens to be the same person right now. So I make a request that we direct that specifically to the Traffic Authority.
Thank you. You get that in the motion, please? Thank you. Wonderful. Any other comments or questions, or would somebody?
Sorry, can I make one more comment, please, or ask a question right quick?
Oh, sorry.
We had mentioned the developer looking at making a community garden for themselves, correct? Have we looked at the 5-story impact on the house? I know it's one single house, but it is still one resident that has still resided on Clark Street forever. We've looked at the shadowing compared to that house. Have we looked at this impact on their house and their garden that they may have that could feed their family in that house as well? Have we looked at that at all? Now we want to mention a community garden. There's a big impact there on one person and their household. And
A shadow study was completed as part of the previous application. Now, it was a slightly different size building. It was still 5 stories, so the shadow impacts are very similar. There were going to be impacts on the neighbor at certain times of the day, obviously, more than others, but it wasn't deemed to be something that would, in and of itself, stop the development from being approved. So it's a balancing act, like that council does, that yes, some people will be impacted by development, but is it better for the greater whole development of the town? That's the balancing and the selection of choices that council has to make.
but this comes back to the Robby Street. They're having theirs possibly looked at decrease in their environment where it fits.
Mm-hmm.
We still have a house that's trying to stand there on their own, and with the house's cost right now, if they can't survive with whatever they are growing or whatever's around them, they're gonna get pushed out. And housing is so unaffordable, as we all know, right? So to look at decreasing one because of what's near them and not looking at possibly decreasing this one, that should be really considered.
I mean, I don't disagree. I think it's a little challenging for the committee to address the concerns of someone who doesn't come before them.
I understand, and I get that, but also when you are doubling it, it's more of a let them know that, hey, this is going to be doubled the height that's requested for an urban corridor.
Mm-hmm.
You say those who don't come before you, maybe they are unable to come out of their house. They have no one to represent them.
Just for
Right, so
just
we're
for
here.
clarification on the shadow study, if there's any shadow from the new building onto the house on Clark Street, it'll only be morning sun. Afternoon and evening sun, that the Clark Street house will have full sun. It'll only be the early morning sun that this new building would shadow it.
Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would love to meet with the owners or residents of 14 Clake. I have brought up that poor one little house both previous meetings, and this is, I guess, now the third time bringing it up. The developer did, in response to some of my concerns, add some privacy fencing at the back so that they do have less impact from that. The shadow study, of course, is a concern, but as Director McKinnon has mentioned, that's only minimal impact in the mornings. I haven't seen that shadow study. I would love to, because I love to get all the information I can. But yeah, I would certainly love to talk to the residents at 14 Clake about their concerns. And I can give you a card if you can reach out at some point, and I can come to them if they are mobility challenged. Thank you.
Okay, well, there is not a motion on the table, but there is some language. So if anybody wants to put that motion on the table. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So that motion is on the table. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor McGrath. Any other discussion, or would somebody like to call for that motion to be voted on? All those in favor of the motion that's on the table signify by saying aye. Aye. Any contrary minded signify by saying nay. Thank you. So just to remind everyone, that is a recommendation we are making. There is still a public engagement session, which is May the 4th, and council will still...
It's the public hearing, yes.
Sorry, public hearing is May the 4th, and everyone is welcome to attend. Thank you.
May the 5th. It's the Monday, yes. May the 4th be with me.
Just so everybody is aware, we will be speaking to Mr. Menendez on his project next, and the one at 656 Yonge Street, we will be moving to our next meeting because the developer is not here.
Yes. The fourth one. When did you send that? Ooh, this isn't the one? I've got 4 of them. Here's the very last one. Here. You sure this isn't the one? It's got the larger entryway? Yep, that's it. Okay, great. Yeah, I've got all, I'm all color coded.
Thank you for the
Yeah, no, that's no problem.
Hello. How shall I refer to you?
Well,
Planner McPherson.
that's great.
Okay. Nice to meet you. I'm Jane. You can just call me Jane or Madam Chair, whatever you want. But thank you, because I think the last time you were supposed to present one of your projects, you couldn't be here. So this is your first time before us. So we will go through this project, and then the next one we're going to put off until tomorrow. Or sorry, until the next meeting. Not tomorrow. Okay. So go ahead, Mr. McPherson.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening to everyone who's here today. So this is a development agreement application for 201 Callback Street. We have the applicant as well as 2 architects in attendance with us today, so they're here to answer any questions that you may have, comment on the development. This development application is by RM Architects. It was made back in February, so very recently. And it is a development agreement to permit a 5-story multi-unit building with a total of 63 units. So in February, we had an opportunity to see the sort of first draft of this proposal. PAC had an opportunity to provide some of their feedback, and we have received new plans, new drawings that address many of the concerns that were provided in February. So this is the second meeting of PAC. It's stage 2 of the application. These are the subject lands. So this is 201 Callback Street, right there outlined in blue. It's approximately 3,170 meters square in area, and it has 38.5 meters of frontage on Callback Street. You can see here the subject lands on the future policy area map, mark it as urban growth. And this is an excerpt from the zoning map showing that it is in the urban growth zone. And just to the north there, you can see the hub apartment buildings, which you'll be able to see a little bit more clearly here. So you can see right down the road there, you have the hub apartment buildings. And this is a view of the subject lands looking north along Callback Street. And that's 185 Callback over there. And so if you wrap around the hub apartment buildings and go up the bank of the parking lot, you can see the existing structure on the property, and there's a little secondary structure there as well. So this is looking west from the parking lot. So in February, we had a site plan. So this is the previous site plan, and it received comment from members of PAC. So there have been some changes. So here's the updated site plan. So you can see, comparing them, that the entryway into the underground parking has changed. Right? There's also a number of other changes. So there's a buffer of trees up there in the north. So that's in the direction of the hub apartment buildings, and that was requested of them. So that tree buffer is being provided there. There's also some details that have been fleshed out here in this common amenity space. You can see there's a gazebo marked here. This wasn't in the previous drawing, so there has been some additional detail added there. This is the previous parking layout that was provided. So it had 56 vehicle parking spaces and 16 bicycle parking spaces. You can see all the lane widths here are 20 feet. And the updated parking, and we had some conversation with the applicant about the design, and we went back and forth on a few different designs. It's been an increase to the number of parking spaces. So in total, it's 69 parking spaces for vehicles. There's 36 interior bike storage spaces provided here, and there's another 6 outside of the development. I can go back and show you where they are. They're right here. It's marked for 6. So on the topic of the parking, this isn't in your report because this was received more recently than the report was submitted. There are some changes that should be addressed. So one of the things that we talked about was the width of these lanes as well as the stalls. So, planning staff just wants to make sure that this is a functional parking space. We're not engineers, but we want to see some sort of, written or signed document that would show that this is a navigable space. It is below the normal requirements for underground parking in the town of Truro's land use bylaw. However, it's not uncommon for that to occur. Those rules may need to change at some point, but it's just something that we wanted to, address at this stage, and we'll be continuing to address it as we move forward. One thing that the applicant did inform me about was that the northern setback, which used to be 8 feet, would become 3 feet, just in terms of the podium, the parking podium. And it was, a question arose last meeting about the distance of the proposed structure as well from the lot of a certain zoning, with 48.2 feet being the required measurement, and so measuring it out, even with the reduction in setback, it still meets that, over 50 feet, probably close to around 63 feet. So that's the parking covered off. So there's a few more details here, just some of the mechanical and the garage stuff that's been added in as well. And moving on to here's an updated ground floor plan. So you can see here, inclusion of 3 bedroom units. In total, there are 4 3-bedroom units. There would, in this updated proposal, be 44 2-bedroom units, as well as 16 1-bedroom units. So that's the overall makeup of the unit structure. And this is just for your reminder, this is functionally the same massing rendering as before, just to show you the property from a perspective. And we've covered most of this before. Thanks to Mr. Fox for covering for me. But this is the enabling policy that allows council to consider development of this kind. This is the public participation. So there will be a development notice sign that will be posted in early, well, I guess it'll be posted when it can be posted. There will be information added to the town website, and there will also be a mail out. So this leaves us at stage 2, and the next stage will be, the main community engagement. So this is the opportunity of PAC as well as anyone who's in attendance. So PAC to provide a comment for us to, for the applicant to consider and to provide any updated plans. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McPherson. And Mr. Menendez, you're here again. You feel free to come down, and you're sharing the stage today with our microphone issues. Councillor Graham, you probably want to speak to the 3-bedroom units.
Well, I'm just really happy to see them.
Good evening.
Oh, hello. Did you have a presentation? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I will add to Jacob's presentation a little bit.
So you would like to present?
I would like to add a little bit to the presentation as well. No, that's okay. Thanks. Madam Chair, thank you. Deputy Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the comments in the previous session. It made the design building much better. I really appreciate your comment about the flipping the driveway, why we didn't use that. Somehow we thought that the design approach was something different, but then we revisited and it made a lot of sense. So we did that. We also had the 4 3-bedroom units as well, and we also deal with the bicycles as well, right? In addition, we did submit as well the storm management plan. You received it?
Yes, I did receive this.
So that will address some of the issues with regard to the drainage system around the perimeter of the building. We have a swell in the back. Do you have it?
I can bring it up. Yeah.
That would be nice.
Well, I don't know if without, there's no internet access, right? So I can't bring it up, sorry.
That's right. So anyway, so we have a swell that begins at the area of, at the entrance of the underground, on the outside, around the perimeter of the building, continues. We have a catch basin on the bottom far section, then continues to, with the swell, and evacuate the water connected to another catch basin, B2, and then into the public street, into the infrastructure. So that was one of the concerns at that time. So we did commission our civil engineer from Servan Danberg to do that. So we submitted to, for the presentation. We have an under drain detail well established there. So that will hopefully deal with that. In addition, we commissioned Anglo to do the geotechnical study that it will also deal with the water table levels and with the environmental aspect as well, which is a requirement for phase 1 as well. So I think that's pretty much what we have right now. I think that we believe that we address most of the issues, if not all of the issues. And if you have any questions, please.
Councillor McGrath, or if you want to get back in, but
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Menendez, for being back here. And thank you for that consideration around the driveway, because I know when we talked about this last month, you said, we looked at it and it wasn't feasible. Given the late hour, if you could, 30 words or less, what changed that you were able to make that work?
Anytime we come here, and when we left last time, so we go to the site. We've been to the site, and I said to Anna, my associate here, and by the way, the developer is with us today, Abdullah Jawaz. So we visit the site, and then we look at the composition, the configuration of the land, and then we say, actually, it will be much better because we're gonna go away from the curb on the driveway, on the street. In addition, once we consider the other section where the podium is gonna be, we're gonna shape that section of the driveway, and will help us as well to keep some of the trees on the bottom section of the property, right? So that was a lot of discussions that we had with Anna and with the developer, and then we decided that was the best suitable decision to flip it.
Excellent. I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see those trees preserved. The sedum mats, because actually, let me back up. You have in your hands, you said you have a stormwater management plan already?
Yes, we did.
This is highly unusual, I think, for anyone to have a stormwater management plan this early in the process. So that's very, very curious. And I want to, I don't know, either thank you or curse you for sending me down a Wikipedia rabbit hole on sedum mats. I started reading all about sedum last night. It's a fantastic thing. I think I might need to get some for my property, but just it's very, very hardy. It can be adjusted for the zones, the hardiness zones. Very, very tenacious plants by the sounds of things. They don't tend to spread, but they're drought resistant, as long as they're looked after. Very, very interesting. I really like a lot of the changes that I've seen here. If we could go, Mr. McPherson, or Planner McPherson, to the parking garage briefly, just because it was mentioned at the previous development agreement that we were looking at was regarding the changes to the Accessibility Act. Are you aware of these changes, and does this plan align with the updates to the Accessibility Act, or is that something that you're going to have to adjust for the next meeting?
In terms of the parking, we meet the requirement for the barrier-free requirement. In terms of the accessibility, I do believe that meet all the requirements of the act.
Okay, so the updated lane widths and things. Sorry,
20 feet.
Mr. McPherson, did you have? I saw you reaching for the microphone. Did you want to cut in there?
I just wanted to add, because it's a little bit hard to see in the graphic here, but there are 4 accessible spaces there. Just not everybody might be able to see it. So
no, I see them. 1, 19, 50, and 51. Yep. But so does the width meet the new Accessibility Act requirements?
Technically speaking, in terms of design, if you look at the location of that parking spaces, they're next to the driveway alley, right? So the requirement is 12 feet. This, technically speaking, by the time you open the door and so on, you have a wait space.
Got all the room in the world there.
Yeah, and the one close to the bicycle as well is, I think it's around 15 feet, more or less.
Okay.
So we meet the requirement.
Excellent. Just want to make sure that that's
absolutely.
that you're aware and that requirement is met. You're ahead of the game with your stormwater management plan already. I have no further comments or questions.
Sure.
Thank you.
In terms of the sedum, it's a good thing that you mentioned, because I tell you, in Halifax, we've been struggling. The regulation, the bylaws requires landscaping, but most of the landscaping, because the weather we have in Nova Scotia, right, is really, it changes every 2 hours. So
that is
trying
one of
to
our quirks here, yes.
landscaping in good shape is really, really hard. So sedum is one of the best solutions to meet the requirement. It's a natural. If you look at the Pier 21 section, the roof is filled with sedum in Halifax. So it's a plant that is very strong, resistant to weather conditions, and also is very beneficial and easy to maintain, relatively speaking.
It's great that it doubles as architecture.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's great that it doubles as both architecture and stormwater.
Absolutely, yeah.
Councillor Graham?
Could you remind me, do you own any of the other 3 buildings there? I just can't remember.
No, no.
No? Okay.
No. I tell you what happens. Over 2 years ago, I was the design director for Dolan Ferris Architect. I was the individual, and my team at that time designed the buildings there.
Oh.
So 2 years ago, I had 2 grandchildren. One is 2 and one is 4. So I negotiated with my wife, said I need to have full flexibility of my time. So I left the company and set up my own company where I can rule my time. But my other junior architects on the other company where I was involved in the previous designs as well.
Well, I really like how those 3 other buildings are positioned on the lot, but this one, and I don't know if this is a true depiction of how this new one will be positioned.
That's the only way.
It's the only way?
A straightforward piece of property, which is almost 90 degrees, right? So it's a rectangular building. So what we're trying to do in the design is basically to preserve as many trees as we can and vegetation on the front of the street, and also give us some privacy as well for the building.
Okay, because that was my next question. Because the others are positioned so well, you know, nobody's looking into anybody's window or balcony. So the solution in this case, because you can't angle it, am I correct that you're saying you're putting trees in between? Is that what you just said?
In between the 2 buildings?
Yes.
No, we have a podium, and then those trees that you see there, obviously,
I'm sorry.
Have a private fence around the section along the podium section. The podium is quite far from the other building, relatively speaking. Per se, the actual building, excluding the podium, is from the other building is, I would say, maybe around 60 feet minimum or more.
Okay. In the picture I was looking at, they look like they're sandwiched together, but...
No, what you do is the podium section is what you see. The podium is only the roof of the underground parking. So the building is actually...
Okay.
There's a fair bit of side yard, is what you're saying.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
It's actually 42 feet.
Councillor Graham,
From
you can
the
see
property line, the actual building, the tower per se.
back of the whole package there.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I was just concerned about, the privacy between those 2 buildings, because they are together, but
Like at the other buildings, the other callback building, let's say the balcony to the property line that we want to have is around 20 feet minimum. Then you have the property line, and that from property line to the tower is going to be another 40 feet more or less. So in total, it's going to be like a 60 feet apart.
yeah. When I was looking, it just didn't look like that in the picture, but thank you for your reassurance there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor, or Deputy Mayor Thomas.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. If we could go to figure 1, it's a photograph. And- Yeah, if I could see, it's a streetscape.
Yes.
Yeah. So all those pine trees and deciduous trees, which are all sort of native species, you're going to try to retain, my understanding is you're going to try to retain as many of those as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's very good. Thank you for that. That's excellent.
Yeah, like for instance, the shortest section of the property is around, I would say, 40 feet.
Yeah, the setback there is...
48 feet setback from the property line.
Yeah, I have 53 feet, which is plenty.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And in addition, some of the trees are within the city property, right?
Right, okay.
So,
Yeah, okay. Yeah, as many as that can be retained is very positive for this location.
Yeah.
The other thing is that in the hand-up that I received from the planning department, it talks about 2 bedrooms plus a 1.5B, and I've never seen that before, and I was wondering if you could explain that.
1.5 bathroom.
1.5 bathrooms.
1.5 bathroom. Like
Excellent.
full bathroom.
Understood.
And a
Yeah,
bathroom.
yeah, I know what that is. Yeah, thank you for that, yeah. Okay. The report didn't have in it is the number of each, like how many one-bedroom, how many two-bedroom, how many three-bedroom, because I always figure out the parking ratio, and I wasn't able to do that. So I was just wondering if you could do that for next time. I know you got it at 1.19 or 1.14, but, I like to figure it out and then make my comments.
Absolutely.
One of the last things is the parking podium, on the north side. The amount of room between the parking podium and the property line. I just want to make sure that that's available again to the urban forester so that they can determine whether it's sufficient to plant a deciduous tree of what type, And I know that's the job of of your landscape architecture or whoever you hire, but it's looked at by this person, and they would be very interested in knowing the amount of space of land that you have where roots can go deep, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And my last comment is about your sedum mat. I think that's great. I think it's a great idea. I'm just worried that, do you live in town?
Halifax.
Oh, you live in Halifax? Well, you've come to deerdom. There's so many deer in this town, and it's been a struggle. And I don't know how sedum and deer get along. And my suspicion is that we're looking at deer food, and you're right next to an environmental zone there, of which there are many, and I'll repeat it one more time, many deer in that ravine. And I think that you're going to find this quite scrumptious for them unless you put up some sort of fencing, And at home I just use a chain link fence or something, to fence it out. But I don't know, but I suspect you're going to need to fence that out if you ever want to see one sedum plant remain more than 3 weeks.
Yeah, no, we met so many of them in the first time we came here like a month ago, so it was.
Yeah, we're trying to solve that problem, but
Yeah.
it's.
No, that's a good point.
It's a struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your plan is great, but you're going to have to make some modifications to keep it. Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thomas. I just wanted to add, because I did go through the numbers, because it was requested at the last PAC meeting. So the ratio of parking is 1.09 parking spaces per unit. It was requested to compare it to the neighboring hub development, and so that is 1.14 spaces per unit at the hub apartments. Yes, there are 16 one-bedroom units, 44 two-bedroom units, and 4 three-bedroom units. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McPherson, the 1.14 for the hub buildings, exterior or interior?
That's
or both?
Combined, yeah.
Okay, thank you. 30 seconds to Councillor McGrath.
From my research on sedum plants, sedums are generally considered deer resistant because of the thick, fleshy leaf texture and bitter taste.
Promising.
Great.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming this evening, and thank you for your patience while you waited through this very lengthy meeting. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned at 9:40, whatever, 39.